Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle. Chapter 221 Qingxiang Pill. Little Sparrow was a vanity-hungry bird. It was a bird that longed for praise. It loved money, stealing, and hanging all kinds of shiny things on its body. Moreover, judging from how this little fellow dealt with the blazing fire python and the clear spirit eagle, it was also very sinister, and it had always been like this. Hearing Xiang Nan's roar, Little Sparrow knew that it was time to show off his strength. It flew out and spat out a flaming wind blade at the multicolored lizard. The flame wind blade slammed into the back of the five-colored lizard, immediately shattering several pieces of colorful crystal stones. The five-colored lizard was furious. It opened its mouth to bite and swung its tail to sweep, but no matter what, it could not catch the little bird's shadow. The little bird swished around the colorful lizard and continuously spat out flaming wind blades, causing the solid crystal stones on the back of the colorful lizard to scatter and fly everywhere. The Gale Sparrow was not an offensive demonic beast, but after evolving once, its strength had also increased considerably. What a powerful bird! Of course, Musweki knew the Gale Sparrow. At this moment, she couldn't help but praise the little sparrow because of its powerful combat strength. Unexpectedly, the little bird was extremely proud after being praised. It actually turned around and winked at Musweki. Musweki was stunned. How could such a small bird demonic beast have such a humane expression? It was at this moment that the multicolored lizard called out to the little bird on the wall with its tail. "Aya, shit! What kind of prestige are you playing at the critical moment?" Xiang Nan scolded, "Hurry up and kill it. Stab it in the eye and get it." The little bird regained its composure and struggled to fly. It bombarded the multicolored lizard again, and this time, the little bird had a clear goal. It only attacked the same area on the back of the multicolored lizard, destroying the solid defensive Jingshi over and over again until the lizard's skin and flesh were exposed. At this moment, the little bird suddenly turned into a string of fire. With a pu sound, it pierced through the lizard's back and emerged from the ground. The five-colored lizard struggled for a few times before finally dying. Thus, the little bird flew back and stood on Xiang Nan's shoulder, looking at the lizard with Xiang Nan and laughing coldly. Xiang Nan repeatedly sneered at the lizard's corpse, while the little bird stood on Xiang Nan's shoulder, squinting its small eyes and acting sinister. These two. For some reason, every time Xiang Nan cooperated with the little bird, he couldn't help but be infected by the little bird, awakening the hidden and despicable side of Xiang Nan's heart. Musweki couldn't help but burst into laughter when she saw the vivid expression of the man and bird. Another catastrophe, escaping death. Time slowly passed. Xiang Nan and Musweki slowly regained their freedom of movement. The two of them sat down cross-legged and simultaneously circulated their vast heaven pure essence technique to speed up their recovery. When the two of them walked out of the underground cave world, it was dark again. Perhaps a whole day had passed. "Do you know who is going to deal with you?" Xiang Nan said in a deep voice. Musweki shook her head, "I'm not sure, but their intentions are very clear. Their ultimate goal must be to harm the nature sect through me. Yes, this matter is no small matter. We must report it back to the sect." Xiang Nan looked at Musweki and said, "It's best if you don't follow the team to patrol, so as not to encounter any accidents." Musweki stubbornly shook her head and said, "I am not someone who is afraid of death. If they want to come, just come. The more they want to target me, the less I can be timid. Alright, since you think so, I won't persuade you anymore. Hurry up and go back, in case the elders can't find you and blame me for the crime." "I don't know, They thought I had traditionally kidnapped you from the heavenly devil religion. When Musweki heard this, she apologized to Xiang Nan. It was my fault. I shouldn't have suspected you that night. I'll go first. You should pay attention to your own safety. Ah, wait. Xiang Nan hurriedly stopped Musweki. He sniffed and said, "You have a faint fragrance on you. It can't be. Did you take the Qinshan pill?" Musweki said, "Yes, what's wrong? Do you want to do it or not?" There was nowhere to be found after stepping through the iron shoes. Xiang Nan was overjoyed. "How much is it?" "I'll buy you one." Musweki's expression darkened as she said, "How much do you think my life is worth?" After saying that, she stuffed a round pill into Xiang Nan's hand and flew away without looking back. There's something wrong with this woman's brain. Xiang Nan held the Qinshan pill in his hand. He didn't know why she suddenly went crazy, but her mood changed so quickly. However, now that Xiang Nan didn't care about that much, he finally got the Qinshan pill. Musweki was someone from Haojing, so why hadn't he thought of it earlier? Since he had the most difficult to obtain Qinshan pills, Xiang Nan was not busy returning. Next, he had to quickly gather the demon tear and the demon spirit grass together. Moreover, after returning, he must prepare a large amount of rejuvenation pills. If he had rejuvenation pills in the underground cavern, he wouldn't have to wait until now to recover. However, Musweki did not have it, did she? Why didn't she take it out? Xiang Nan could not understand this point and was too lazy to continue thinking about it. Tears of demons were refined from the tears of 20 demonic beasts into crystals, while demonic spirit grass was a kind of demonic grass that grew in the extinction grounds of the demonic beasts. These two items could be found in the Haran mountain range. Xiang Nan returned to the underground cavern and opened the eyes of the dead lizard. Next, he left the karst cave and searched the Haran mountains for traces of demonic beasts. Seeking demonic beasts was Xiang Nan's specialty. He flapped his Yuan Qi feathered wings and flew into the air. Then, a flash of lightning flashed in his eyes, allowing him to see all the invisible demonic energy. The level of demonic beasts here was very low. To Xiang Nan, it was easy to capture. It only took Xiang Nan a day to collect all these items. Just as he was about to return to the nature sect, a place suddenly caught his attention. It was a mountain, an ordinary mountain. From the outside, there was practically nothing unusual about it. If Xiang Nan hadn't used his lightning vision to search for the 20th demonic beast just now, he wouldn't have noticed anything unusual about this mountain. How strange. Could it be that I saw wrong? Xiang Nan furrowed his brows and once again cast his lightning-like gaze towards the interior of the mountain. Inside the strange mountain peak, there was a blurry black mist that blocked Xiang Nan's line of sight. Even lightning photoelectric eyes were unable to penetrate that strange layer of black mist. Is it demonic energy? Xiang Nan muttered in his heart, if it was demonic energy, why didn't it leak out the slightest bit of demonic energy? Could it be that there were some heavenly treasures inside that blocked his line of sight? Thinking of this, Xiang Nan landed at the foot of the mountain and searched around. Finally, he discovered an extremely concealed entrance to the cave. Chapter 222 Devour Light. Even though Xiang Nan was standing at the edge of the cave entrance, he couldn't sense anything strange inside. However, when he looked at it again with his lightning vision, there was indeed a large area of dense black substance inside, obstructing his vision. Although Xiang Nan was bold, if there were other ways, he wouldn't be so stupid as to insist on taking risks. He planned to use a knife to cut a huge crack in the mountain to see if the black stuff would leak out, so that he wouldn't have to walk in stupidly. However, when he slashed down with his saber, an even more unimaginable situation appeared. The essence chi from that saber slashed into countless mountain stones in all directions, but the mountain stones immediately flew back and clung to the place where they were sliced. To think that it's healed. This Xiang Nan was suddenly shocked. The mountain stones healed. This strange situation could only occur in one situation, and that was the escape technique. Humans have 5 attributes, and all things in the world are made up of 5 elements. Escape technique was a very powerful movement technique, and it was also divided into 5 elements: wind escape, water escape, fire escape, earth escape, and wood escape. When a person unleashed earth escape, they would fuse their entire body into the ground or into the rocks, allowing them to merge with earth-attributed elements. Through this method, he could move at an unimaginable speed, and some high-level evasion techniques were even faster than flying. When a martial artist used earth escape, the area he was in would not be destroyed. Because the earth element was highly activated, even if the blade was slashed down, the soil would still fuse again after being sliced open. Earth escape was the true fusion of humans and the earth. It was not as simple as diving into the ground alone. The rocks here actually, Xiang Nan suddenly became interested. If it weren't for the fact that someone was using the escape technique all the time inside the mountain, it was because there were some powerful, spirit medium crystals hidden inside that could cultivate the escape technique. Forget it, I have to go in and take a look. Xiang Nan thought that if he could cultivate an escape technique, then he would undoubtedly have another way to escape. Right now, what he lacked the most was the escape movement technique. Although the flash footsteps were fast, the distance between them was too short. It was simply not enough. He took a deep breath and forcefully stepped into the cave. After going deep into the cave for a while, he discovered that he had entered the dark region. This dark region is really dark. Even Xiang Nan took out a moonstone. The moonstone's light could not illuminate the path in front of him, as if the black air could swallow the light. This is strange. Xiang Nan stretched out his hand and didn't dare to act rashly. Even if there were really expensive spirit medium crystals inside, it was impossible for them to swallow all the light, right? However, Xiang Nan was not someone who would give up easily. The more this situation was, the more he had to go inside to find out what was going on. He directly used the sun god technique to draw light, causing a gentle beam of sunlight to envelop him. Finally, a visible range appeared in front of him. It seemed that the sun god technique had a certain restraining effect on this strange darkness. Xiang Nan calmed down a little and continued to walk forward. The further he went, the more strange things would happen. When Xiang Nan was about 1,000 meters deep, the range of vision he could see was also shrinking. A 3-meter wide light could illuminate an area of about 10 meters in radius. But now, a 3-meter wide beam of light could only illuminate about 5 meters. What was especially strange was that Xiang Nan felt that his lightning meridian's attribute seemed to be in a state of restlessness. This was something he had never seen before. This darkness can actually touch my lightning meridian's power. Xiang Nan sucked in a breath of cold air and continued forward. If he walked another 500 meters, he would no longer be able to see another 5 meters. His visibility had already been suppressed to just 3.5 meters, that was, the area that was shrouded by the light. The lightning power in Xiang Nan's body became even more restless. This was not an uneasy restlessness, but an eagerness to try. Xiang had never experienced such a situation before. When he didn't take the initiative to use the lightning meridian's attribute, the darkness seemed to ignite his own lightning meridian's power. If he continued to walk, it would be another 500 meters. Xiang Nan was almost unable to move a single step, because the lightning meridian's power in his body was spreading out uncontrollably. Crackling bolts of lightning wrapped around Xiang Nan, turning him into a person of lightning. What the hell is this place? Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and used his avatar imprint to split out an avatar, causing the avatar to cast a quenching sun. Boom! A fierce beam of sunlight slammed into the avatar. At this moment, the restless thunder veins in Xiang Nan's body suddenly stabilized. The avatar only lasted for 10 seconds. Xiang Nan didn't dare to waste any time. He had already barged in, so he decided to go all out. He quickened his pace and even began to run rapidly in the rugged cave. However, 5 seconds later, the thunder and lightning in his body boiled again and sprayed out of control from Xiang Nan's mouth, eyes, ears, and nose. Xiang Nan had no choice but to use the sun-quenching technique himself, allowing him and his avatar to release 2 beams of sun-quenching light at the same time. At this time, Xiang Nan felt that he was getting closer and closer to something mysterious. He only needed a few more seconds to reach his destination. But quenching the sun was not a joke, especially when one's true body and avatar were quenching the sun at the same time. At this moment, Xiang Nan didn't use sun-quenching to rush in, but to escape. He immediately increased his speed to the fastest and sprinted crazily in the direction he came from. Finally, he rushed out of the cave in one breath and immediately disbanded Kenyang. Then, he collapsed onto the ground and gasped for breath. This won't work. I can't use my true body to temper the sun. It's too dangerous. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and refused to leave. Why don't you directly refine the demon-suppressing pill and refine the second avatar? And then make another mysterious cave. At this moment, Xiang Nan had already sensed that there must be something in the destination he was about to arrive at. It was also that thing that created the darkness in the cave and ignited his lightning meridian's attribute. Originally, he thought that there might be a piece of Earth-attributed spirit medium crystal inside, but the Earth-attributed spirit medium crystal was impossible to create darkness, let alone stimulate his talent. From this point of view, the things inside were far from as simple as he had imagined. Xiang Nan's eyes lit up. Can it stimulate my talent? Could it be a rare lightning-type spirit medium crystal? But is there really such a thing in the world? Xiang Nan had never heard of him before. Even if it wasn't a lightning-type spirit medium crystal stone, it would definitely be able to help him cultivate an escape technique. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain it clearly. Perhaps he could even borrow that thing and directly cultivate it to become a lightning evasion. Xiang Nan became excited and immediately returned to the nature sect to refine the demon-suppressing pill. Chapter 223 Earn Money. To refine the primary demon-suppressing pill, Xiang Nan had already gathered all the main ingredients. There were still more than 20 types of spiritual herbs left. The spirit herb store in Haotian City was large in scale, and many large clans' headquarters were located here. The magic herbs required for the demon-suppressing pill were all third-grade herbs. The average price of this third-grade herb on the market was 30,000 gold coins per plant. Xiang Nan entered the city and found a large-scale spirit herb shop. When he handed over the spirit herb formula he needed and heard the shopkeeper say that he had it all, he heaved a sigh of relief. But then came the question. Xiang Nan had already spent more than 800,000 gold coins from the masked man in Baisho City. According to the average price, he should be able to buy more than 20 kinds of spirit herbs. Unfortunately, 2 of these third-grade spirit herbs are relatively rare. Just these 2 spirit herbs are worth 200,000 gold coins. As a result, the total value of the spiritual herbs on his spiritual herbs list had reached more than 900,000 yuan. Xiang Nan had long known that spirit herbs could not be priced according to grade alone. Most importantly, they were rare. For example, the spirit herbs needed for the origin transformation pill were extremely precious. What should I do? Xiang Nan's face suddenly turned grim. Money. I need money. A martial artist was really a profession that burned money. Spending nearly 1 million gold coins was like throwing a pebble into the sea, unable to even see a single drop of water. 700,000 to 800,000 gold coins. An ordinary citizen of a medium-sized city could only earn more than 100 gold coins a year. 700,000 to 800,000 was enough for them to live for 10 lifetimes. However, 700,000 to 800,000 was not considered money in the eyes of a martial artist. Moreover, Xiang Nan's spirit-grade primary pill furnace should have been eliminated long ago. He also wanted to buy a new pill furnace. The shopkeeper looked at Xiang Nan curiously and said, "Is there something wrong with the prescription?" Xiang Nan smiled embarrassedly and said, "I don't have enough money on me." The shopkeeper smiled and said, "The most profitable industries in this world are alchemists and artificers. Whoever is short of money will not lack money in these two industries, right?" Hearing this, Xiang Nan was stunned for a moment before slapping his forehead and cursing himself as an idiot. How could he not have thought of such a simple principle? Looks like I really don't have any talent for business. He could buy spiritual herbs first, then refine them into medicinal pills before selling them. The average price of a third-grade spiritual herb was 30,000 gold coins, while the average price of a third-grade medicinal pill was as high as 5 million gold coins. To an alchemist, gold coins were like dirt. They were useless. No wonder Meng Dai took him to a Tier 3 alchemist for medical treatment last time. That alchemist could buy a huge manor in the middle of a huge city. Do you accept pills? What pills sell best? Xiang Nan hurriedly asked. The shopkeeper said, "We collect some scattered items. However, if you want to make a large-scale move, you'd better find an auction house. As for the best-selling pill, it is a second-grade foundation establishment pill. One of these pills can sell for 500,000 gold coins, and the best quality pill can sell for over 1 million. It was the foundation establishment pill. Xiang Nan immediately wrote a prescription for the foundation establishment pill and handed it to the shopkeeper. He temporarily stopped buying the spiritual herbs he needed to save money. Xiang Nan knew that this type of foundation establishment pill was quite common, so he didn't need to go to Tianji Hall. The average price of a Tier 2 spiritual herb was only 3,000 gold coins. The total number of foundation establishment pills required was 30, and each set would cost around 100,000 gold coins. Xiang Nan bought all his money for the spirit herbs needed for the foundation establishment pill. He bought a total of 7 sets and immediately returned to the Sun Peak of the Haran sect. Xiang Nan's own pill furnace was already cracked, but he was still able to barely survive refining a second-grade foundation establishment pill. After getting everything ready, he was so excited that he started to earn money. Alchemist should be one of the richest professions in the world. What's valuable is the craftsmanship of this kind of craftsmanship. Haran sect is very strong, right? It had almost recruited the world's top geniuses, but even among the nearly 10,000 disciples of the Haran sect, how many truly possessed pill refining talent? Although alchemists earned money, the number of such professions was very rare. Not to mention the Haran sect, if it was outside, perhaps there might not be a single alchemist out of 10,000 martial artists, but with such a small amount of precious alchemists, wouldn't it be natural for them not to earn money if they wanted to provide the entire world of martial arts with the amount of pills they needed? Xiang Nan divided all the herbs into 7 parts and refined them one by one. The lower the grade of the pill, the less time it took and the higher the success rate. Very quickly, with the quality of Xiang Nan's pill-breaking furnace, it only took him 2 hours to refine a foundation establishment pill. 2nd grade top grade. Xiang Nan looked at the quality of the pills he had refined and was very satisfied. The higher the quality of the pills, the more perfect the medicinal properties. Most importantly, the less damage they would cause to the martial artists. It was a 3rd poison, but the toxicity of top-grade pills was negligible. Again, Xiang Nan was holding back on earning money, but he didn't go out for a whole day and night and hid in Sun Palace to refine pills. On the morning of the next day, Xiang Nan felt much less tired when he saw a total of 7 top-grade foundation establishment pills. Xiang Nan, someone is looking for me. Just as Xiang Nan was about to leave, Su Kaiyu suddenly appeared and left. Looking for me? Xiang Nan wondered, who would look for him? And we found Sun Peak. He walked out of the Sun Palace with a puzzled expression, only to see a graceful woman standing under the morning light at the door. The early morning sun shone on her body, giving Xiang Nan the feeling that there was a lotus floating in the cold pond water. Moreover, the lotus was newly blooming and was stained with dew droplets. Xiang Nan felt refreshed by this woman and asked curiously, "Senior Sister Xueqi, are you looking for me?" Mu Xueqi put her hands behind her back and looked at Xiang Nan with a smile. "Why don't you welcome me?" "Oh, no, no. You are the first person to come to Sun Palace to look for me. It's just a little rare. Is there anything you need me for?" Xiang Nan hurriedly greeted. Mu Xueqi smiled and said, "I'm leaving with the team this morning." "Yes." Xiang Nan also doesn't know what to say. "Why are you telling me this when you're traveling?" Mu Xueqi's expression darkened slightly when she saw that Xiang Nan's performance was neither cold nor indifferent. "I'm just reminding you to be careful. Perhaps the black-clothed man wouldn't give up that night. You should pay attention to your safety," she said. "Also, I'll give you this." Mu Xueqi threw a porcelain bottle to Xiang Nan and said, "I'm in a hurry, so I won't talk to you anymore. Let's go first." As expected, I'm not mistaken. There's something wrong with this woman's brain. Xiang Nan shook his head helplessly. When Mu Xueqi first arrived, her face was full of spring, but when she left, she had a calm expression on her face. "Woman, you really can't figure it out." Pulling open the cork of the porcelain bottle, a faint fragrance floated out from it. There were 3 fragrant pills lying inside. Chapter 224 Frantic Amassing of Wealth. Xiang Nan did not think too much and put the bottle into his storage ring and ran out of the sect. At this time, the patrol team was already prepared, and they were parting outside the main gate of the Haoran sect. Thousands of disciples had already gone out to send them off. Everyone would like to take this opportunity to see the elegance of the flower of nature. Under the attention of everyone, Mu Xueqi had returned to the confident and glorious senior sister Xueqi. However, her gaze had been wandering among the disciples, as if she was looking for something. When she finally saw Xiang Nan, she was first overjoyed, and then she realized that Xiang Nan was just passing by in a hurry and running towards Haotian City. "Xueqi, it's time to go," a mentor urged. Lu Xueqi replied. Looking at Xiang Nan's back, she couldn't help but sigh. Then, she turned around and started to follow the large group. The flying demonic beasts spread their wings and slowly entered the clouds. "Aya. Senior Sister Xueqi came to see me off. Could it be that she reminded me to send her off? Xiang Nan ran all the way and patted his forehead. Xiang Nan, who was aware of the situation, looked out towards the direction of the nature sect and discovered that the large group had already left. He shook his head and continued on his way. The auction houses in Haotian City were varied and belonged to different aristocratic families and clans. Some were high-end auction houses that specialized in auctioning rare treasures in the world. To enter such an auction house, one had to have membership. Ordinary people would not be able to enter. There were also some high-end and middle-end auction houses that sold more items, but they weren't something that ordinary people could afford. Of course, there were also some underground auction houses. These auction houses were not to be seen. Most of the items auctioned inside were stolen by killing people and stealing goods. Or, they were selling prohibited items that violated the laws of the Haotian Empire. For example, slaves, some storage rings that were not unsealed, and so on. Most of the auction houses were gathered together, and there were often as many as 10 on the same street. The treasure gathering pavilion. Xiang Nan's eyes lit up and he suddenly discovered a familiar name. Isn't this the property of the Whampoa aristocrat clan? Xiang Nan thought back to Whampoa Ruyan and Xiao Yuer, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. He really missed adventuring with them in the Black Sharp Demon Forest. After bidding farewell in recent years, I wonder if little Yuer's illness has recovered. Is Miss Ruyan, who loves her younger sister so much, okay now? Xiang Nan entered the wealth pavilion and found the person in charge of the consignment auction. That person told Xiang Nan that the profit from sending the auction was the highest, but he had to wait for the right time. Someone had to buy it before the seller could get the money. The auction house itself also had a purchase business. The seller directly sold the treasure to the auction house. How much money the auction house could sell the treasure for next had nothing to do with the seller. Look at my pills. Xiang Nan took out his 7 foundation establishment pills. The person in charge nodded and said, all of them are of top quality. Let me be clear. If you send these pills for auction, you can probably earn 1 million gold coins per pill. If you sell them directly to our auction house, I will be able to bid 900,000 gold coins. Sell it directly. Xiang Nan immediately made his decision. He endured the price difference of 100,000 gold coins, so it didn't matter. Immediately after, the person in charge took out a 6.3 million gold coin memory card and handed it to Xiang Nan. He really was rich. 700,000 gold coins, in the blink of an eye, had become 6,300,000. This was truly a huge profit. Xiang Nan did not love the money of the secular world, but even so, his heart couldn't help but beat wildly when he made a profit of millions with a single change of hands. Do you need more pills? Xiang Nan asked. The person in charge smiled meaningfully and said, do you still have any? How much do you want? Xiang Nan asked. How many do you have? The person in charge smiled brighter and brighter. Understood. Xiang Nan smiled faintly and turned around to run towards the Haoran sect. The cost of each foundation establishment pill was around 100,000 gold coins, and the price was as high as 900,000 gold coins. A single foundation establishment pill could earn a net profit of 800,000 gold coins. The next day, Xiang Nan held 10 foundation establishment pills and came to the treasure gathering pavilion. 10 foundation establishment pills were purchased by the Gathering Money Pavilion for 9 million gold coins. At this time, Xiang Nan's memory card already had an astronomical figure of 14 million gold coins. Xiang Nan's breathing started to quicken. He couldn't believe it. Money. Money. So much money. It was all in his storage ring. But this time, not only did the person in charge of the auction house give Xiang Nan gold coins, there was also a card with the words, "The Treasure Gathering Pavilion, Whampoa," printed on it. The person in charge told Xiang Nan that every time Xiang Nan traded in the Treasure Gathering Pavilion in the future, this card would increase the corresponding amount of points. Sometimes, some large auction houses would get some very rare treasures. These hot treasures would definitely not be made public to the public. Then who would they sell them to? It was sold to these respected buyers and sellers who held auction house cards, and they were transported through a single channel. With this card, you are a distinguished guest of our conglomerate pavilion. The person in charge still maintained a professional smile and said, "In the future, regardless of whether you are here for consignment or bidding, you will receive high standards of treatment and limited rights. By the way, this is a personal suggestion." The person in charge stood beside Xiang Nan and whispered, "We only sell these foundation establishment pills. It's a little small. If you have better pills, we can talk about it." Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and said ruthlessly, "How much is the essence transformation pill?" The person in charge immediately fell silent. The essence transformation pill was not a joke. Later on, the smile on the person in charge disappeared. He whispered, "The origin transformation pill is not something that ordinary alchemists can cultivate. In this market, only a few sects and aristocratic families have mastered the origin transformation pill. If you have it and are willing to sell it, we will buy it for 20 million yuan. Hissed Xiang Nan, sucked in a breath of cold air. He knew that the essence transformation pill was very expensive, but he didn't expect it to be able to do so. Expensive. Then do you have any ingredients for the origin transformation pill? Xiang Nan knew that the spirit herbs needed for the essence transformation pill were rare, and it wasn't easy to gather them all. The person in charge said, "How about this? The cost of a yuan transformation pill varies from time to time, and the price also fluctuates. At present, the cost is around 4 million gold coins. We can directly provide you with the materials. You just need to help us refine the pills and pay for your 15 million yuan manual fee. How about it?" "All right." Xiang Nan immediately decided. An undetectable light flashed in the eyes of the person in charge. Xiang Nan's experience in interpersonal communication was still too poor. He didn't see the trap that the person in charge had set for him. "Didn't you tell others that you, a boy who just turned 17, have the ability to refine the essence transformation pill?" Chapter 225 I'm Rich. The origin transformation pill was not an ordinary thing, nor was it an auxiliary pill. Instead, it was a precious treasure that could directly allow a martial artist to convert the Xiantian into Yuan Qi. Alchemists who had the ability to refine origin transformation pills had basically entered the sect. They needed to use the sect as their powerful backer to ensure their own safety. Therefore, most of the origin transformation pills that could be seen on the market came from outside the sect, and the amount was extremely rare. "This thing is priceless. Even if you have money, you can't buy it. Please come with me." The person in charge led Xiang Nan all the way in and said, "We can provide the ingredients and pill furnaces free of charge. All you need to do is successfully refine the pills and hand them over to us." As he spoke, Xiang Nan followed the person in charge into the backyard of the auction house and made a few rounds before entering an underground secret room. This underground secret room had a huge space. It was as vast as a manor. There were many compartments inside. Each compartment was partitioned by thick metal doors. There was a row of cubicles in the deepest part of the room, and the person in charge brought Xiang Nan into one of them. This secret room was not small, it was square, and in the middle was squatting an earthly grade original grade pill furnace, which was priceless. After that, the person in charge summoned 6 female waitresses and brought 30 trays for Xiang Nan. Each tray was filled with the ingredients and spiritual herbs needed to refine the essence transformation pill. The person in charge said, "The probability of failure in refining the essence transformation pill is extremely high. I know that. Here are 10 pills for you. You only need to cultivate 3 pills to meet our requirements. Then I won't disturb you." After saying that, the person in charge left this place with his other subordinates. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and began to refine the essence transformation pill. Although the environment here was not comparable to Zhaohua Peak's pill refining room, at least the quality of the pill furnace was very good, and it was not much worse than Zhaohua Peak's. This made Xiang Nan very satisfied. After refining the essence transformation pill here, he would be able to refine one every 4 hours. Xiang Nan deliberately delayed for 5 full days in order to make himself less shocking, and he handed over 5 essence transformation pills. Actually, Xiang Nan's success rate in refining the essence transformation pill had already exceeded 90%. It was more than enough to refine 10 pills, but that was still the same principle. As for the remaining 5 origin transformation pills, they were directly destroyed by Xiang Nan. He could take it away, but wouldn't that be stealing? Nan wouldn't do such a thing. It was very different from stealing the snake eggs of the blazing fire python. It was because he had an agreement with the conglomerate pavilion that he had to have a spirit of contract, but not with the blazing fire python. Even so, the person in charge was still shocked by the 50% success rate. He praised repeatedly, "Indeed, he is a disciple of the nature sect. He is not a trivial person. Here are 80 million gold coins. Please keep it." The person in charge respectfully handed Xiang Nan a storage card and said, "If you need it in the future, please give priority to the treasure gathering pavilion. Your presence will be a great honor to us. You should give me 75 million for each of the 15 million pills that we agreed to." Xiang Nan was puzzled. "The other 5 million gold coins are for your hard work. I'm extremely sorry for wasting 5 days of your time." The person in charge said respectfully. Being able to curry favor with an alchemist, especially such a young and terrifying alchemist, was already far more than tens of millions of gold coins. Okay. Xiang Nan took the memory card and was in a good mood. The Whampoa aristocrat clan was able to achieve such a large scale. It really wasn't due to luck. It depends on the way they treated people and handled things. Indeed, they were proficient in business. After leaving the treasure-gathering pavilion, Xiang Nan suddenly felt that the sky was so blue and the sun was so round. Rich. I'm really rich. 80 million gold. In addition to the 14 million he had previously obtained from selling foundation establishment pills, Xiang Nan now had an astonishing worth of 94 million gold coins. Little sparrow, let's go. Buy. Buy what you like. I'll buy you gemstones, many, many gemstones. The little bird stood on Xiang Nan's shoulder and jumped excitedly. The little bird raised its head high and finally became a rich bird. How? I can't even finish spending it. 90 million gold coins. Xiang Nan had armed the little bird from head to toe and hung it all over with glittering gemstones. Only then did it cost more than 100,000 gold coins. Damn it, if I go to the Drunken Dream Pavilion in the future, I can also spend money to save myself from eating and drinking every time. Xiang Nan originally planned to get a few essence transformation pills and send them to the Xiang clan so that they could make some money, but after some consideration, he gave up on this plan. If a clan wanted to grow bigger, it wasn't just about earning money. The most important thing was the clan's background. With the Xiang clan's current scale and influence, it was not enough to control a business worth tens of millions of dollars. It's like you were originally a steamed bun seller, but one day, all of your steamed bun turned into essence transformation pills. This is definitely not a good thing for you. Because you don't have enough powerful forces to protect your business. I'm afraid that only bad luck awaits you. Let the Xiang clan slowly develop for a period of time first. Cultivating more trustworthy people and cultivating more of their own power is the only way. Xiang Nan thought for a moment. Though the Xiang clan had better not touch such a thing as pills for the time being, but it didn't matter if they only gave the Xiang clan some financial support. Thinking of this, Xiang Nan directly distributed 50 million gold coins. After returning to the Haran sect, he handed the storage card containing 50 million gold coins to the Sound Transmission Hall and sent it to the Xiang clan in Bluestone City and Bluestone Town of Wulong Prefecture. Ordinary people had to go through mercenary groups or professional escort agencies to escort property and supplies from a long distance. However, the sect's influence was enormous, so it was naturally unnecessary. The Sound Transmission Hall was such an organization. Its significance was similar to that of an escort agency, and it was responsible for escorting supplies. I wonder if my parents and grandfather will be happy to receive such a large sum of money. Xiang Nan was in a good mood. After he walked out, he could finally help the clan. This was one of the benefits of a small clan being able to walk out of a sect disciple. After all this was done, Xiang Nan also experienced the life of a wealthy person. He waved his hand and spent an entire 10 million gold coins to buy a high-grade spirit pill furnace. He threw the spirit pill furnace he had been using into the corner of Sun Palace. A high-grade spirit-grade pill furnace could withstand the refining strength of a 4th-grade pill. For Xiang Nan, it was more than enough. Everything was ready. Xiang Nan didn't waste any more time and immediately began to refine the primary demon-suppressing pill. This demon-suppressing pill was a Tier 3 medicinal pill, and it was still within Xiang Nan's control. It only took him one night to obtain a pitch-black demon-suppressing pill. Whoosh! Xiang Nan let out a long breath and glanced not far away. The little bird was carefully hanging strings of translucent gemstone necklaces on the tree branches. It even jumped back and forth. No matter how much it appreciated them, it couldn't appreciate them enough. Wealthy fans. Xiang Nan curled his lips. Perhaps he should get an intermediate storage ring for Little Sparrow as well. Specially for gemstones. Intermediate storage rings weren't cheap, they were worth around 3 million gold coins. Chapter 226 Within the Cave. Xiang Nan rested for a night. The next day, he was ready in high spirits and began to cultivate the second level of the Avatar Seal. He first went through the Clone Seal's incantation in his heart, and then he solemnly swallowed the demon-suppressing pill. The demon-suppressing pill's medicinal effects were strange. Once refined by Xiang Nan, it immediately displayed an extraordinary effect. That made Xiang Nan feel like he was floating. However, he knew that this was just a sensory illusion. In fact, he was still sitting on the ground without moving. Immediately after, his consciousness seemed to have escaped from his physical body. The higher he flew, the farther he flew. Gradually, the clamor in the mortal world disappeared. He felt like he was floating up the clouds and looking down at the rolling world of the world with a condescending attitude. At this moment, everything in the world had nothing to do with Xiang Nan. He was like a bystander in a world, observing everything with a calm mind. No one had any ulterior motives or tricks. In Xiang Nan's heart, the intrigue between those people was nothing more than a piece of dust in the long river of history that was not enough to be recorded. He felt that his mind was unprecedentedly calm, and his mind was so open that it could accommodate all the seas, mountains, and rivers. The feeling of transcendence made Xiang Nan abandon all distracting thoughts, and he only had a heart of martial arts that remained unchanged from the ancient times. The Tao heart was the most important thing for a martial artist. If the Tao heart was unstable, then the path of martial arts would be long and unclear, and it would be easy to wear away one's will. At the very least, one would be stuck at the bottleneck of martial arts, and at the very most, one would be enchanted with the devil and the jade. Human nature was already complicated. No matter how interesting things were, if they were to experience them day and night, they would feel completely dull. The path of martial arts was endless, ranging from several decades to hundreds or even thousands of years. How could a martial artist always have a blazing heart towards martial arts without repenting? Only the Tao heart was also. Xiang Nan subconsciously began to cultivate the second level of the avatar seal. The obscure phrases and the complicated state of the three uses of one's heart became clear. Xiang Nan felt that he was not alone, but the whole world. When the feeling of traveling through the 9 heavens suddenly condensed in Xiang Nan's heart, it quickly flew back to its original body. Xiang Nan opened his eyes, his gaze as calm as a lake. His hands quickly formed incantations, and his imprints continuously collided with his hands. In the end, his avatar was printed. With a whoosh, the 2 incarnations left and right from Xiang Nan's body. Xiang Nan's expression was still as calm as ever, and he slowly closed his eyes. In the next few hours, Xiang Nan continued to repeat this set of actions, constantly cultivating and familiarizing himself with the second level of the avatar imprint. The most difficult part was getting into the sect. Once he remembered this feeling, even if the effects of the medicine disappeared, he would be able to separate out 2 avatars. As night approached, the effects of the demon-suppressing pill in his body finally dissipated, and Xiang Nan slowly opened his eyes. Whoosh, he let out a long breath and practiced the avatar imprint countless times. This time, without the support of the demon-suppressing pill, he succeeded again. The 2 avatars moved horizontally from both sides of the main body. The facial features of the 2 avatars were in a daze, but their existences were incomparably clear. A light flashed in Xiang Nan's eyes as he leapt into the air. His enormous Yuan Qi feathered wings spread out and he immediately flew away. "Little sparrow, this trip is dangerous. Stay here and wait for me." As he spoke, Xiang Nan's figure had long since disappeared. It was best not to bring the little bird along to enter that strange cave, so that he wouldn't have the time to protect it with sunlight after entering the dangerous place. Very quickly, Xiang Nan landed under the strange mountain again. He took a deep breath and forced his scalp to barge in for the second time. It was still the same darkness that he could not see with his fingers. He first used light and sunset to illuminate the area in front of him. Shortly after, when the effects of the light were about to collapse, Xiang Nan, who had his previous experience, immediately sprinted wildly. He had to rush as fast as he could into the deepest part of the cave. The darkness immediately engulfed him, causing the lightning meridian's attribute in his body to become unprecedentedly restless. Xiang Nan did not hesitate to split out his first avatar and let it temper the sun. Along with the shrouding of the strong light, Xiang Nan and his doppelganger sprinted side by side and continued to go deeper. However, the road inside the cave was rugged, and the flash shadow steps could not be used at all, so they could only run. Gradually, the darkness became even more unrestrained, and even the quenching sun couldn't hold on any longer. Xiang Nan took away his first avatar and split into two at the same time. The two avatars were simultaneously quenching the sun. We can't waste too much time. Xiang Nan increased his speed further, and his body had already turned into an afterimage. Suddenly, Xiang Nan rushed into a strange space. This place gave Xiang Nan a sudden feeling of enlightenment. In this space, there was only endless darkness, as if even the mountain walls and the ground had disappeared. Xiang Nan knew that this was an illusion. He had entered the deepest depths of the darkness, and the two suns could no longer protect him. Too shocking. There was actually such a bizarre place hidden within the Haran mountain range. Go all out. Xiang Nan was ruthless. He gritted his teeth and released the quenching sun. 3 fierce pillars of light struck the ground violently, wrapping around Xiang Nan and his two avatars. The probability of him going crazy was astonishingly high. Xiang Nan guessed that he would start to backfire if he continued to temper the sun for less than 10 seconds at most. At this moment, not only was it Xiang Nan's main body, even the two avatars outside were wrapped in dense lightning. Not good. The backlash of the sun god technique is light. If this continues, I'm afraid my talent will collapse. Without the slightest hesitation, Xiang Nan immediately went to find the one who caused the darkness. Relying on his perception of the source of darkness, he quickly rushed towards the core area. In an instant, he arrived at an open space in the deepest part of the cave. Crack! Crack! Crazy lightning burst out from Xiang Nan's 7 orifices uncontrollably. This is, when Xiang Nan saw the person who caused the darkness, he felt his pores open and his hair stand on end. It was an altar. An altar made of countless bones. The altar was 3 meters tall and had a towering structure. Each bone contained an unimaginable amount of demonic energy. The owners of those bones had died for thousands of years, but they were still emitting a dense demonic aura. It was hard to imagine what their identities were like before they died. What truly shocked Xiang Nan was not the bones, but a small crystal floating above the altar. Void stone. My God, it really is this kind of thing. Xiang Nan's eyes almost popped out. He didn't even have time to think. He grabbed the pitch-black crystal stone in his hand and jumped straight up. He used a heavy knife to hack it and rushed out of a straight and upward tunnel in the mountain. Chapter 227 Black Lightning. When he entered, he needed to find the deepest part of the cave according to its rugged movements. However, there was no need for him to do so if he went out. He could directly charge out of the mountain, regardless of which direction he went from. Under the night, a mountain peak suddenly exploded with a tunnel. Countless rubble shot out everywhere. Immediately after, a figure flew out under the cover of sunlight. Then, it unfurled its enormous Yuan Qi wings and continuously ascended into the sky. Xiang Nan grabbed the small black crystal and flew upwards. He did not stop until he had crossed the clouds several times and entered the highest depths of the sky. As for the little black crystal stone, once it left the altar, it would no longer create darkness. Instead, it would calmly lie in Xiang Nan's palm. Xiang Nan quickly retrieved his avatar and sun god technique and began to size up the items in his hand. This was a crystal that was only the size of a grain of rice. Its entire body was pitch black, not reflecting any light, and there was a faint layer of flowing light floating on the surface of the crystal. Those streaks of light were black and blue, as mysterious and beautiful as the night sky. It's really a void stone. Xiang Nan's breathing quickened. Almost no one knew what the void stone was for, nor how it came about. In his previous life, Xiang Nan had heard of this kind of thing. He only knew that the void stone was a gem that could be compatible with any attribute. This kind of thing could fundamentally change the structure of the world. The world was made up of 5 elements. The elements were arranged in an orderly manner so that mountains and rivers would not collapse, rivers would not dry up, and the world would not disintegrate. Void stones, on the other hand, could destroy the elemental structure, causing an element to suddenly go berserk. In the vast historical literature, the explanation of the void stone was rare, only a few strokes. This thing also affects my lightning meridian's attribute. I wonder if it can be used. Xiang Nan carefully considered for a long time whether he should use his lightning vein attribute to probe this void stone. However, he didn't know what the result of the probing would be. Perhaps, he would be blown into dust. However, Xiang Nan was someone who would never give up until he reached his goal. He was lucky enough to obtain this item in his lifetime. If he didn't even dare to use it, would he regret it for the rest of his life when he was late in life or when he was about to die? You've already died once. Are you afraid of dying again? Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and poured his lightning meridian's power into the void stone. At that time, numerous bolts of lightning suddenly disappeared into the void rock. Just like that, Xiang Nan was stunned. The void stone was still as calm as before, as if there was no reaction at all. But the next moment, the void stone suddenly seemed to have come to life. It searched for the source of thunder and lightning power, that was, Xiang Nan, and drilled into the space between Xiang Nan's eyebrows. Xiang Nan was quick to reach out and grab the void stone. As a result, the void stone was in a strange state and was simply unable to grab it. It was like a non-existent void that pierced through Xiang Nan's palm and penetrated the space between his eyebrows. Then, Xiang Nan felt a loud boom in his head, and his entire body fainted. After an unknown amount of time, he slowly woke up and turned around. However, he felt no pain in his body at all. It was just a peculiar feeling in his mind, and his Yuan Qi feathered wings were still unconsciously flapping slowly. Then, he carefully comprehended it and was shocked to discover that he could actually look into his mind. In his mind, the void stone did not exist, but existed in his consciousness. Within that illusory space of consciousness, a small black crystal floated in the air. Where is this stone? Xiang Nan was extremely shocked. Consciousness was just a kind of saying, it was a combination of human thoughts and subconscious, but this was just a kind of saying. Could it be that a place like the space of consciousness really exists in a person's mind? Xiang Nan tried to think about the void stone, but the void stone didn't respond. He frowned as he circulated the lightning meridian's attribute. As a result, the void stone suddenly started to tremble. Pang! A bolt of lightning enveloped Xiang Nan. These bolts of lightning weren't created by Xiang Nan at all. Instead, they were created by the void stone. What was most unbelievable to Xiang Nan was that the arcs surrounding his body were all pure black. Before Xiang Nan could think about it, he felt a sharp headache. He hugged his head and struggled back and forth in the air. The headache gradually disappeared after a few hours. Seeing that the sky was about to brighten, Xiang Nan mercilessly tried again. As a result, the void stone still stimulated Xiang Nan's lightning meridian's attribute this time. However, it did not cause any headaches. Instead, it caused Xiang Nan's consciousness to become blurry. So it's like this. Xiang Nan rubbed his temples and continued to slowly wait for his recovery. Movements consumed human strength, martial skills, strength, and yuan qi. Some powerful martial skills consumed blood essence as a price. However, what this void stone consumed was consciousness. In other words, it will devour Xiang Nan's consciousness. Every time Xiang Nan used the void stone, it would swallow some of Xiang Nan's consciousness. If it used too much, it would cause Xiang Nan to lose consciousness and fall into a coma. The sky had already brightened, and Xiang Nan's blurry consciousness regained consciousness. Fortunately, the consciousness devoured by the void stone could be automatically restored, so there was no need to worry about being eaten into a fool by the void stone. However, this void stone is clearly able to heal the wounds on the mountain. This means that it has an absolute effect on escape techniques. No, this thing can't be retrieved from my brain anymore. I can't sacrifice it for nothing. I have to see if it can help me learn the evasion technique. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and began to carefully sense the small amount of lightning attributes in the air. Actually, he didn't know what he should do. He only followed the rules of the escape technique. That was to comprehend the innate attributes he possessed, perceive the corresponding attributes between heaven and earth, and then merge with it. Xiang Nan pointed in a general direction. Then, he used his consciousness to touch the void stone, and at the same time, he refined qi into electricity. At this moment, Xiang Nan's body was suddenly wrapped in a dense layer of black lightning. With a whoosh, his entire body turned into a streak of black lightning that pierced through the sky. The black lightning was extremely strange, and when no lightning appeared, it would explode. It was so quiet and silent that it flashed through the sky. Xiang Nan could already feel that his eyes had also turned black. He felt that his entire body was no longer in the shape of a human, nor did he have the structure of a human. Instead, he had truly turned into a streak of black lightning. In the blink of an eye, he stopped. From turning into black lightning, to flashing out, to stopping, it only took him a moment at most. But, where is this place? Xiang Nan rubbed his temples. Because he tried using the void stone this time, his consciousness started to blur again. He didn't dare to use it again until he recovered. In front of him was a vast ocean. East China Sea. Holy shit! After Xiang Nan saw the ocean clearly, he couldn't help but curse. Previously, he was located on the east side of the Haoran mountain range, at least 100 miles away from the East China Sea. Xiang Nan was stunned. His eyes widened and he said, this time, lightning escape, actually instantly crossed a distance of 100 kilometers. Chapter 228 Penetrate Through. Xiang Nan tried his best to calm down the excitement in his heart and recover from the pleasant surprise. This move had to make Xiang Nan ecstatic. It was simply too powerful. In a blink of an eye, 100 miles. What was this concept? That meant that if someone wanted to kill Xiang Nan in the future, Xiang Nan only needed to turn into black lightning and escape. In a blink of an eye, after Xiang Nan escaped, the enemies who wanted to kill him didn't know which direction to chase after him. Of course, this wasn't a complete escape method. If they encountered some experts with exceptionally high cultivation realms, they would still be able to sense Xiang Nan's yuan qi fluctuations from 100 miles away. No, this void stone definitely has other uses. Xiang Nan calmed down and thought carefully. The void stone that he accidentally obtained could be said to be extremely lucky. If he didn't extract all of its value, he would be sorry for the name void stone. Since the Void Stone possesses the special ability to fuse with the elements of the 5 elements, does that mean that it can not only be used as an escape technique, but also pierce through everything at the same time? Xiang Nan rubbed his chin as he thought carefully and merged with everything. In fact, thinking in a different direction was equivalent to being able to penetrate everything, wasn't it? Thinking of this, Xiang Nan pulled out his black-scaled saber and poured it into the blade with the lightning meridian's attribute. At this moment, the black-scaled saber's grade increased rapidly and turned into an earth-grade elementary-grade weapon. This black scale is extremely hard. If my hand can pierce through it, then my guess is correct. Xiang Nan muttered to himself and raised his right hand. Earth-grade weapons were all forged through thousands of refinements, so their strength was unquestionable. Xiang Nan wondered if he would consume less consciousness if he only wrapped the black lightning around his right hand. It should be like this. As he thought about it, Xiang Nan put this bold idea into action. One had to know that this kind of behavior was also very dangerous. If his arm pierced through the giant saber and the black lightning instantly lost its effect, then his right arm would become one with the giant saber and be completely crippled. Whoosh! Xiang Nan took a deep breath, then used the lightning meridian's attribute power to refine qi into electricity, and connected to the Void Stone at the same time. At this moment, the crackling lightning enveloped half of Xiang Nan's right arm, and the lightning suddenly turned into a pure black, strange lightning. Xiang Nan took note of the time, turned his right hand into a hand blade, and instantly pierced towards the giant blade. At that moment, his right hand felt as if it had pierced through clear water. He could only feel a slight resistance. After a long time, his arm really pierced through the huge saber and pierced out from the other end of the saber. Holy shit! Xiang Nan's eyes widened as he cursed, but at the same time, he could feel his consciousness rapidly fading away. Although it consumed a lot less consciousness than when using lightning evasion, sustaining the existence of black lightning would also accumulate. Xiang Nan hurriedly pulled back his right hand and looked at the huge saber. The blade was as smooth as before, and there was no sign of damage at all. He immediately withdrew the black lightning and felt a slight flash in front of him. He felt that the world was spinning, and his dizziness was terrible. However, this small price was nothing compared to the new uses of black lightning. Xiang Nan took a few deep breaths and became excited again. Although this move seemed to be impossible to kill, apart from this weakness, it could be said to be extremely useful. Imagine that one day, if he found a sealed treasure box, that box would not open no matter what. At this time, black lightning wrapped around his right hand would pierce through the box and take out the contents. Thinking of this, Xiang Nan couldn't help but laugh. Also, this move was also very helpful to the exploration of tombs. Some tombs were blocked by strong giant doors. As long as he wrapped the black lightning around his entire body, wouldn't it be just a single step into them? Xiang Nan was in a good mood. He hadn't expected that the harvest of this trip would be so great. After stabilizing his mind for a moment, he flew towards the direction of the Haoran sect. In the next few days, Xiang Nan did not plan to do any more missions. Instead, he had to concentrate on cultivating hard to welcome the arrival of the 12-sect joint examination. When he passed by the credit hall, he discovered that there were almost half fewer students entering and leaving the hall than usual. Everyone seemed to have the same thoughts as Xiang Nan. In the end, they didn't go out anymore and concentrated on welcoming the joint examination. On this day, it was also the first time that Xiang Nan had stepped onto the side of the Sun Peak and the Fortune Peak. Sword Sect, Xiangyang Peak. Only after stepping onto the Sunrise Peak did Xiang Nan realize how lively the other sects were. In comparison, the sunrise peak was truly not enough to be described as a Menkoro's peak. The sword sect was incomparably large, and there were countless disciples on the entire mountain peak. Those numerous sword sect disciples and experts were currently cultivating diligently and painstakingly. Streaks of Xiantian Qi rushed forward and shot everywhere. The disciples were either fighting in pairs or gathering together in groups of 3 or 5 to discuss their experiences in cultivating Xiantian Qi. Xiang Nan felt a little envious when he saw other people's excitement. "Isn't that Xiang Nan?" Someone recognized Xiang Nan at first glance and couldn't help but shout. Xiang Nan had already made a name for himself. Everyone in the Haran sect knew about him lately. "Yoho, Xiang Nan is free to come to our Xiangyang Peak." A third-grade senior brother walked over and patted Xiang Nan on the shoulder. "What, are you going to switch to Yangfeng? That's a wise decision." Xiang Nan smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Senior brother, don't laugh at me. I'm here to find someone." Although Xiang Nan did not know that senior brother, the senior brothers and sisters of the 3rd grade academy liked the last batch of junior brothers of the 23rd generation very much. "Looking for someone? Looking for Yunfan?" that senior brother asked curiously. Xiang Nan shook his head and said, "I'm looking for Murong Wanqing." The senior brother nodded and said, "There are many disciples of our sword sect. You are not familiar with this place. I will take you there." As he spoke, senior brother led the way and led Xiang Nan into the Sunrise Palace. The size of the Sunrise Palace was similar to that of the Sun Palace. However, at this moment, there were people in the large palace complex. There were disciples who were also immersed in reading books and walking around on the path of the palace in all directions. There were so many rooms in Sun Palace, but they were all empty. It could be said that Xiang Nan could stay in any room he wanted. The female disciples' residence was behind the Sunny Hall. As soon as they entered, large numbers of female disciples welcomed them with smiles. "Ah, isn't this Xiang Nan? Why did you come to our sunny palace?" These female disciples were very curious about Xiang Nan. They didn't know what method Xiang Nan had used to obtain the heavenly demon sect demonic woman. "Seniors, I want to talk to Murong Wanqing." A girl covered her mouth and smiled. "Wanqing girl is very beautiful. Why did you change your target? Don't you plan to take the girl from the heavenly devil religion?" The girls surrounded Xiang Nan, chattering non-stop, making Xiang Nan blush. Chapter 229 Cultivation Tower. Today, Xiang Nan could be considered to have experienced what it meant 3 women are enough for a drama. These female disciples were usually very tall, but when they came together, their appearances had completely changed. The openness of those girls made Xiang Nan feel extremely embarrassed. "Little junior brother Xiang Nan, isn't that why you're so attractive to women, because of your excellent kung fu in that place?" "I'm sure it is. Look, I heard that from the man's face. I can tell how big he is." As she spoke, a group of women held their chins thoughtfully and began to look at Xiang Nan's face. Occasionally, their gazes would greet Xiang Nan's private part. Xiang Nan smiled bitterly and kept begging for mercy. "Senior sisters, please help me call Murong Wanqing." They knew what to do, but they were only teasing Xiang Nan. Afterwards, someone called Murong Wanqing over. "You're looking for me?" Murong Wanqing looked at Xiang Nan strangely. "This is a rare thing. It's rare for you to come to Sunny Peak. Why are you looking for me? Tell me." Xiang Nan cupped his fists and said, "I haven't had time to thank you for helping me out last time. I'll host the Drunken Dream Pavilion tonight. Please be sure to come." Murong Wanqing smiled faintly. You're referring to the matter with Yang Liener and Jiang Cheng, right? You're overthinking it. I'm not trying to help you, but I'm simply not used to seeing Jiang Cheng and the others. But since you have the heart to thank us, I'll accept it. I'll see you tonight at Drunken Dream Pavilion. That night, Murong Wanqing, Shen Linhai, Feng Zhaoqi, Luo Yuan, Jiang Yu, and the others all arrived. After 2 conflicts with the second-grade academy, their relationship had eased up a lot, giving Xiang Nan some face. Xiang Nan looked at the 5 aristocratic families and raised his wine bowl. I won't say anything else. It seems to be pretentious. I'm not used to the way you drink. Let's take care of ourselves. This bowl, thank you all for your righteous actions a few days ago. Xiang Nan will do it first as a token of respect. Xiang Nan took a sip of the liquor and turned the bowl around. The other 5 people looked at each other and laughed. You brat, I really can't tell you. Murong Wanqing shook her head and changed her wine cup into a wine bowl. I really can't speak, she said. It's like we're all petty people. Come on, Xiang Nan, let's do it. Feng Zhaoqi also put on a bowl of wine and drank it all in one gulp, accompanied by a few others. After a few bowls of wine, everyone was not used to drinking like this at first, but their mood slowly became cheerful. On the contrary, they felt that this kind of large mouthful of wine also had a different flavor. I'm going to take the 12-sec joint exam immediately. I'm definitely going for the first place. Murong Wanqing put down the bowl of wine and picked up a chopstick of vegetables. But I hope you guys try your best to get a good ranking. Don't embarrass me. Everyone smiled and shook their heads. They didn't have the same experience as her. They all knew that she always had this kind of temper. Luo Yuan said, "Fortunately, you came to find us today. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to find us tomorrow." Then why? Xiang Nanqi said. Luo Yuan said, "We plan to stop going out before the 12 joint examinations. We will go to the War God Temple to cultivate together tomorrow." Can the War God Temple still cultivate? Xiang Nan was stunned. After Luo Yuan explained, he finally understood the other function of the War God Temple. The Battle God Palace was not just used to store cultivation techniques and martial skill manuals, there was also a huge cultivation tower beneath the surface of the Battle God Palace. This cultivation tower was upside down, with its tip facing downwards. It was divided into 6 floors, corresponding to the corresponding academy grade. The array master of the nature sect had set up an incomparably large spirit gathering array in the War God Temple to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the cultivation tower. In other words, the concentration of spiritual energy inside the tower was more than 100 times higher than that outside. There's still this kind of thing. Xiang Nan suddenly realized that he hadn't been to the War God Temple once, so he didn't know. Looks like all of you are quite serious. Xiang Nan took a sip of wine and said. Then Murong Wanqing said, "Don't underestimate those second-grade disciples. Don't think that you can beat dozens of them all at once. If you think like this, you are wrong. This is the first round of the 12-sec joint examination. Everyone wants to get a good ranking. Those second-rate sects will definitely install some core disciples to compete with us." The Haoran sect indeed had countless geniuses. These geniuses could reach the terrifying 3rd level of origin return at the age of 17 or 18, but so what? The joint examination this time only limited the realm and did not limit the age. You are a 17-year-old Guiyuan 3rd layer martial artist, but they can also send a 25-year-old Guiyuan 3rd layer martial artist. His realm is the same as yours, but he has much more experience than you. Especially, Shen Linhai interrupted, "This is a good opportunity to become famous. Those second-rate sects will definitely teach their strongest cultivation technique and martial skills to their disciples, so that their own sects can gain reputation. So this battle is not simple." Xiang Nan nodded thoughtfully, and then everyone drank for a while before leaving. After returning to Sun Peak, Xiang Nan had a good rest for the night before rushing to the War God Temple the next morning. The scale of the War God Temple was much smaller than that of the Credit Hall, but just as Luo Yuan had said, it contained the universe. Upon entering the Battle God Temple, there were 2 stairs. One led to the book collection area above and the other to the cultivation tower underground. Xiang Nan walked down the stairs and officially entered the cultivation tower. The moment he entered the tower, he felt that the surrounding spiritual energy had disappeared completely. The Haoran sect itself was very rich in spiritual energy, but there wasn't even a single trace of it in this tower. The scene was extremely strange. The area on the first floor belonged to the cultivation of the first-grade students. At this moment, there were already many first-grade students talking in the hall. Around the hall, there were 3 rings of secret chambers arranged high and low. Each secret chamber was isolated by stone doors. The first floor of the tower has a 3-ring secret chamber, Xiang Nan observed as he arrived at the second floor. The cultivation tower on the second floor also had 3-ring secret chambers. More than half of the secret chambers were closed, indicating that there were already people inside. People came and went in the hall. Many students from the second-grade academy were present. Some were chatting about their cultivation methods, while others were waiting for others. Xiang Nan did not know how to obtain the right to cultivate, so he walked towards a window at the entrance of the second floor, where there were staff members. "Excuse me, how can I enter the secret room to cultivate?" Xiang Nan asked. The staff member looked up at Xiang Nan and said, "Use your credits to exchange for the time limit for cultivation." Ah! Xiang Nan felt bitter in his heart. He didn't even have a single credit left. Could it be that he still needed to do a mission? "Are you Xiang Nan?" The staff looked at Xiang Nan carefully for a while. "Yes." Xiang Nan nodded. "Here's something for you," the staff member said. As he spoke, the staff member took out a small token and said, "This token is left for you by Mu Sweki. You can exchange it for 2 months at most." Chapter 230 Surround. Before Mu Sweki left, she had already arranged for Xiang Nan. She knew that Xiang Nan would definitely come to the cultivation tower for the 12 joint examinations. She directly used her credits to exchange for an entry token for the secret room and deposited it here. After Xiang Nan came, he would naturally get it. At this time, Xiang Nan discovered that the entrance token Mu Sweki had left for him was golden, and there were 2 other colors hanging on the wall beside the staff member. One was silver, the other was copper. The staff member explained that each floor of the tower had a 3-ring secret chamber. The deeper the secret chamber, the denser the spiritual energy. In other words, the 3 rings were the weakest, the second ring was the second, and the first ring was the strongest. The third ring of the cultivation tower's secret room was located on the next floor, and so on. The golden token was the first ring of the corresponding second floor. As for credit exchange, it was progressive. The third ring on the first floor was 1 credit a day, the second ring was 2, and the third ring was 3. In other words, the first ring on the second floor required 6 credits a day. Mu Sweki directly rented Xiang Nan the right to use it for 2 months, which meant that she had exchanged 360 credits. "Shui Qi is really nice to you." The staff member looked at Xiang Nan ambiguously and said, "Don't let her down." Xiang Nan was a little stunned. After receiving the token, he turned around and left. Behind him, the staff member's cold words came. I really don't know what kind of special temperament this kid possesses that can attract so many beauties to like him. TSK, people are more popular than people. Xiang Nan's back paused for a moment, but he was too lazy to argue with him. Like the staff of the credit hall, the staff of the cultivation tower were also part-time disciples of the sect, so they could earn credits from this. Of course, this kind of person didn't have much strength. Otherwise, they would have already gone out to do missions. That was why they were so resentful towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan glanced around and was about to find a secret room to start cultivating. However, he discovered that almost all of the secret rooms in the first ring were closed. What a waste of money! Xiang Nan sighed with emotion. In order to cultivate, everyone didn't hesitate to spend 6 credits a day. There were only 13 secret rooms left, but strangely enough, 5 of the 13 secret rooms had name badges on them, with the names of Muron Wanqing, Shen Linhai, Feng Zhaoqi, Luo Yuan, and Jiang Yu written on them. The 5 of them hadn't come yet, but they had already occupied the secret room with their names in advance. Although the other second-grade students were very dissatisfied, they didn't dare to offend the 5 aristocratic families, so no one dared to enter. In addition, there were 8 secret chambers, which also occupied the majority. There were a few people standing at the entrance, some of whom were acquaintances of Xiang Nan. Everyone from the 4 great clans of Haotian City was present. Yang Liener from the Yang clan, Chu Yan from the Chu clan, 2 people from the Hong clan and the Zhou clan that Xiang Nan had never seen before, and Jiang Cheng, who had the deepest grudges with Xiang Nan. They also saw Xiang Nan and stared at him without saying a word. The 8 secret chambers were blocked by them. Xiang Nan did not intend to quarrel with them, but went in their direction and chose a secret room at the edge to enter. Stop! Jiang Cheng took a step forward and stood in front of Xiang Nan. He raised his chin high and sneered, someone has already taken over this place. You can go somewhere else. Xiang Nan frowned and walked to the second empty secret room. As a result, Jiang Cheng took another step forward and said, there are people here too. Xiang Nan did not continue to walk down. Instead, he said, are the remaining 6 also occupied by you? That's right. Jiang Cheng pointed at the second ring and said, if you want to cultivate, go up. Xiang Nan looked at them and said, there are only 5 of you. How did you occupy 8 secret chambers? How many secret chambers do we need to explain to you? Beside him, a burly man walked over. This person was a member of the Hong clan. His name was Hong Bin. He was also a famous expert in the second-grade academy. At the age of 18, he had already stepped into the 5th level of the Origin Return realm. In terms of strength, he should not be weaker than Jiang Cheng. Another person hugged his shoulder and sneered, Xiang, don't think that you can come to the second-grade academy just because you are famous in the first-grade academy. This second-grade academy is our territory. Dragon, you have to coil it up for me. Tiger, you have to lie down for me. This person's name was Zhou Xianyong. He was a member of the Zhou clan of Haotian City, and he was also a super expert at the 5th level of Origin Return. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and said, I'm not in the mood to argue with you right now. 5 secret chambers belong to you, but I have to take one of the other 3. You can try. Jiang Cheng hugged his shoulders and said, Jiang Cheng, what are you talking about with such a soft meal? Hong Bin shouted, fuck him. After Xiang Nan finished speaking, he walked towards an empty secret room. Jiang Qing did not dare to provoke Muron Wanqing and the others, but he was not afraid of Xiang Nan. He immediately took a step forward and his right hand shook violently. Xiang Nan folded his hands and pushed Jiang Qing's hand. He immediately felt a strong yuan qi rushing towards him like mountains and seas. This time, Xiang Nan's feet were directly pushed off the ground, and his entire body floated back about half a meter. In the end, the difference in cultivation realms was still relatively large. One was at the 5th level of origin return, while the other was at the 3rd level of origin return. The difference in cultivation realms between the two small realms also revealed some clues about the suppression of cultivation realms. Jiang Qing, what kind of relationship do you have with him? Hongbin frowned, looking very unhappy. However, Jiang Qing's expression changed slightly. He had no intention of showing mercy at all. This palm strike was intended to shock Xiang Nan into internal injuries. He didn't expect that Xiang Nan's yuan qi would be so solid that it would only shake Xiang Nan to the point of floating half a meter away. So you're going to make a move? Xiang Nan narrowed his eyes. Xiang Nan, I told you to come in and lie down today. Jiang Qing's teeth itched with hatred, and he rushed forward with a single step. Surround him. Don't let him leave. Hongbin roared angrily, and everyone cut off Xiang Nan's path of retreat. As for Jiang Qing, he quickly rushed forward and threw a heavy punch at Xiang Nan's face. This was extremely detrimental to Xiang Nan. Jiang Qing, Hongbin, and Zhou Xianyong were all peak experts at the early 5th layer of the origin realm. Xiang Nan, a martial artist who had just entered the 3rd level of the origin realm, was surrounded by such a few great masters, which made him seem to be at an exceptional disadvantage. However, facing Jiang Qing's heavy punch, Xiang Nan did not retreat. He also punched in the face. Xiang Nan knew that his yuan qi at the 3rd level of the origin refinement realm would definitely not be able to match Jiang Qing's. This punch had used qi refinement to turn it into electricity. In an instant, thunderous lightning wrapped around Xiang Nan's right arm and collided heavily with Jiang Qing. Lightning Meridian's attribute. Hongbin and Zhou Xianyong were both shocked. Chu Yan hugged her shoulders and said with a faint smile, I didn't believe Jiang Qing when he mentioned it earlier. Now, it seems that it's actually true. Chapter 231 Fight between Dragons and Tigers. Even if Xiang Nan used qi refinement to turn it into electricity, the strength of his yuan qi was still far from Jiang Qing's. That Jiang Qing wasn't an ordinary 5th level origin returning expert, but a true peak expert. Originally, Xiang Nan's punch would surely suffer internal injuries or even be sent flying. However, the Lightning Meridian's attribute was not called for nothing. This rare attribute had a unique effect, and that was the paralyzing effect. Xiang Nan's astonishing lightning power instantly poured into Jiang Qing's right arm, causing that terrifying yuan qi of Jiang Qing to be unable to circulate smoothly, immediately becoming chaotic. As a result, the two of them were in a stalemate. No one retreated. Damn it! Hongbin's eyes went straight as he shouted, such an astonishing Lightning Meridian's attribute actually exists on this brat. It really is a waste of heaven and earth. If you give me this attribute, then wouldn't I be? Hearing Hongbin's envious words, Jiang Qing became even more furious and shouted, Primordial Dipper Qi. In an instant, Jiang Qing's yuan qi suddenly increased and surged towards Xiang Nan like a storm. Xiang Nan did not show weakness either. He raised his left hand high up and used a small quenching of the sun. A thin ray of sunlight penetrated his body, causing Xiang Nan's right fist to shine brightly. Boom! A spherical yuan qi light wave was blasted out by the two of them. Immediately after, the light wave frantically spread out, but it was suppressed by an invisible force within the cultivation tower. Inside the cultivation tower, there was the protection power hidden by the 3 generations of elders. Without this power, the disciples cultivating in seclusion would probably have been riddled with holes in the cultivation tower long ago if they had cultivated their yuan qi crazily. After that shocking collision, Xiang Nan took 10 steps back, while Jiang Cheng only took 2 steps back. Xiang Nan took a deep breath, his mood extremely solemn. This Jiang Cheng was not simple. The others were even more shocked. Jiang Cheng was an expert at the 5th level of the origin return realm. The result they were expecting was that Jiang Cheng's punch knocked Xiang Nan unconscious, and it wasn't as simple as letting Xiang Nan take a few steps back. Good boy. Hong Bin took a step forward and struck Xiang Nan's stomach with his palm. This Hong Bin was different from Jiang Cheng. He had used a martial skill. That palm strike was extremely shocking. Its yuan qi had actually condensed into a tiger's head on its palm. The essence tiger's head wrapped around Hong Bin's right hand and half of his arm. When his palm struck, there was a faint howl of a tiger. Xiang Nan did not dare to underestimate his enemy in the slightest. He used his hand as a saber, and the saber in his hand shone brightly as he chopped together with Hong Bin. In this battle, Xiang Nan gently floated back 10 meters away. However, Hong Bin did not move at all. His strength was even stronger than Jiang Cheng's. Most importantly, Xiang Nan felt his entire right hand tremble, and an unbearable pain came from his wrist. On the other hand, Hong Bin's expression did not change, and his heart did not beat. He did not show any signs of being traumatized. Xiang Nan's heart was heavy. Regardless of what kind of experts the second-rate sect had sent, it was extremely difficult for him to deal with these 3 super experts of the Haoran sect. As for Hong Bin, he seemed to look down on Xiang Nan even more than Jiang Cheng. When Xiang Nan managed to barely catch his attack, he felt that there was no light on his face. His angular face revealed anger. Tiger stance, Pu Yu. Hong Bin jumped up and punched down towards Xiang Nan's entire body. At this moment, Hong Bin's entire right arm was enveloped by a yuan qi tiger. This was a complete small yuan qi tiger body. Its limbs and tail were all there, not just a little bit like the tiger's head just now. It looked like Hong Bin was riding a fierce tiger with his right arm as he pounced towards Xiang Nan, confirming the name of this move, Pu Yu. The tyrannical howl of a tiger resounded throughout the entire arena, causing the eardrums of the spectators to ache. Xiang Nan had never seen such a martial skill before, so he was caught off guard and could only dodge quickly, dodging that ferocious tiger pouncing on his prey. As for Hong Bin, he landed on the ground and left without stopping at all. After a brilliant tiger landed on the ground, it fiercely kicked on the ground and pounced towards Xiang Nan again. This scene did not look like Hong Bin was riding a tiger, but rather, it looked like the tiger was driving Hong Bin to move. Xiang Nan didn't even have time to pull out his giant saber, so he could only use his right arm as a saber to make his arm droop. Facing Hong Bin, who was pouncing on him, he used the Azure Dragon Strike to go out to sea. The power of the sun wrapped around Xiang Nan's arm, forming a large crescent blade light that collided with Hong Bin's ferocious tiger. What was shocking was that the fierce tiger actually opened its mouth wide and bit the blade light in one bite. Hiss, this kid is really not simple. Chu Yan's eyes turned cold. He actually managed to last 2 moves in Hong Bin's hands. So what? Zhou Xianyong smiled coldly. At most, Hong Bin can send him back to his hometown with 3 moves. Xiang Nan was in an unspeakable state of pain. He felt that the power of the fierce tiger's bite was incredibly strong. Almost every second, his own power was being suppressed even more. In less than 3 seconds, his saber light would shatter and be pounced on by the ferocious tiger. Xiang Nan could no longer hold on any longer and could only roar angrily. He shouted in his heart, quenching the sun. A pillar of violent sunlight descended from the sky and landed on Xiang Nan's body with a loud boom. When the azure dragon went out to sea, its power doubled. In an instant, Xiang Nan's disadvantage was reversed, and he even seemed to have an advantage. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Although this was not the first time they had seen the sun god technique, every time they saw it, they would be shocked. Primordial Dipper Chi. Hongbin also let out a low roar as the fierce tiger suddenly exploded. Originally, this fierce tiger was only 2 meters long, but this time, it directly increased to 5 meters long. Hongbin's entire body was enveloped by the fierce tiger. Xiang Nan's azure dragon went out to sea and lost for the first time. He was actually pushed back by the fierce tiger and started to slide backwards. Even when Xiang Nan fought against 17 experts alone, the azure dragon had never gone out to sea weak. In the dragon-tiger battle, the dragon had fallen into a disadvantage and was about to lose. Of course, a large part of the reason was that Xiang Nan didn't have the chance to use the giant saber, so he couldn't use the last move of the drawing saber slash. Shatter it! Hongbin roared, and the giant tiger's huge mouth bit together, forcefully shattering Xiang Nan's saber light. Xiang Nan took the opportunity to dodge the tiger's fatal attack with a flash of his body. All the students present were stunned for a moment before they cried out in alarm. Heavens! I've dodged! That Xiang Nan of the 3rd level of origin return actually managed to dodge Hongbin's lunar attack. This is simply. Zhou Xianyong's expression stiffened as he said, "This is simply." He could no longer find a suitable language to describe the shock at this moment. Although from the looks of it, Xiang Nan was considered to have failed, and he was forced to dodge when fighting Hongbin. But Hongbin was at the 5th level of the origin realm. Shouldn't the result be that Hongbin's attack heavily injured Xiang Nan? This was the result, of course, wasn't it? Chapter 232 Crazy Ascension. Everyone was shocked by Xiang Nan's strength. Even Hongbin's face was filled with disbelief. He knew how powerful this move of his was. Pu Yu's oppressive power was indescribably strong. No one could dodge under such great pressure. This was impossible. Not only was Xiang Nan uninjured, he also dodged with his astonishing ability. Everyone was incomparably shocked, but Xiang Nan himself was not happy at all. No matter what, he was still defeated. Although no one took out their trump cards in this battle, they were defeated. There was no reason for them to excuse themselves. Hongbin was obviously unwilling. He waved his right hand and Yuan Qi began to condense on his arm, preparing to continue fighting. But at this moment, an explosive shout interrupted their dispute. "What are you doing?" The staff member trotted over and shouted, "How can you fight in a cultivation area? If you fight again, everyone will be disqualified from cultivating." The staff member was also not a good thing. He had long since seen Xiang Nan being besieged, but he had been watching coldly from the side and did not stand out to speak. However, when he saw the anger on Hongbin's face, he couldn't hold it back any longer. If Hongbin really killed Xiang Nan on the spot, he wouldn't be able to explain himself, so he reluctantly stood up and interrupted. Hongbin gritted his teeth and stared fixedly at Xiang Nan's eyes. He said coldly, "Kid, wait for me, you'll see." Our second-grade academy doesn't allow you to act wildly. Jiang Cheng and Zhou Xianyong also rubbed their fists together. They had a look on their faces. If it wasn't for the staff coming to stop them, they would have insisted on removing one of Xiang Nan's arms. Xiang Nan narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I'll be waiting for you." After saying that, he strode into a secret room and the stone door closed with a loud boom. After this brief exchange, although Xiang Nan did not suffer any losses, he knew how big the gap between him and Hongbin was. This strengthened his determination to become stronger. Without sufficient strength, there were only two choices, no matter where they were. Or, like the other students, they would be intimidated by Jiang Cheng and Hongbin's shadows and be afraid and cowardly all day long. Either that, he would fight back, and if he didn't want to be trampled on by others, he would have to rely on his own fist to speak. Last time, it was Jiang Yunfan's appearance that saved Xiang Nan's life. Last time, it was Murong Wanqing and the others who took action together to save him from Jiang Cheng and the others' restraints. You can't rely on other people to help you every time, can you? When Xiang Nan thought of this, his heart was filled with fighting spirit. He had to prove himself with his own strength. There was a groove on the wall of this secret room that was used to inlay golden tokens. When the golden token was placed inside, an astonishing amount of spiritual energy suddenly surged forth. This spiritual chi was so fierce that it made Xiang Nan feel as if he was in clear water. He could actually feel the illusion of being dense. There were still 2 months left before the 12 joint examinations, and the golden token could last for exactly 2 months. Xiang Nan sat down cross-legged, took out 2 porcelain bottles from his storage ring, and poured the pills into his palms. These 2 pills, one was a 4th-grade qi condensation pill and the other was a 4th-grade body condensation pill. They were found in the storage ring of that strange smiling masked youth from 100 Beast City. To refine a Tier 4 medicinal pill, it would be best to reach the 5th level of origin return. But at this moment, Xiang Nan had made up his mind to prove his strength, so he didn't care about that much. My martial Dao foundation is much stronger than a martial artist at the same realm. I should be able to barely withstand consuming these 2 pills. Go all out. Xiang Nan was ruthless and swallowed the body tempering pill first. Body refinement was a long-term and arduous task that required persistence. It was not done overnight. The violent medicinal properties of medicinal pills could increase a martial artist's physique to a higher level permanently within a short period of time. However, the price they paid for it was naturally unbearable for ordinary people. As soon as Xiang Nan swallowed the pill, he felt as if he was in a blazing fire. His skin, muscles, bones, and meridians were all suffering indescribably. Xiang Nan's eyes were red from the pain. If he had to endure the pain at the 5th level of the origin realm, he would have been able to alleviate it a lot. But Xiang Nan's heart was filled with ruthlessness. In order to achieve his goal, he could ignore everything. He gritted his teeth and resisted. All the muscles in his body were slowly squirming to a visible degree. Not once did he squirm, but it was a tearing pain. Every time he wriggled, Xiang Nan's physique would increase by a bit. Based on Xiang Nan's understanding of Tier 4 body refining pills, he knew that the medicinal properties of these pills were extremely long and could last for at most a month. Next, some suffered. In the other secret chambers, the Haoran sect disciples were also seizing the time to cultivate in seclusion, but Xiang Nan was the only one suffering from pain at all times. Half a month had passed, and the medicinal properties of the body tempering pill had reached an unprecedented peak. In the future, the peak of the medicinal properties would gradually weaken as the martial artist's physique increased. This was the most difficult day in Xiang Nan's life. Normally, he would be torn apart by the power of the white flames and lightning, and his skin and muscles would be torn apart. But today, his entire body was like a balloon that was about to explode. That kind of inflatable feeling really meant that he couldn't survive and couldn't die. Xiang Nan's eyes were bloodshot. 2 streams of blood and tears flowed down the corners of his eyes. He could feel a ball of flame swallowing in his stomach. The flame was burning him crazily. His meridians also seemed to be scraped down layer by someone using a steel knife. His entire body was soaked in cold sweat. Just sitting there, his entire body trembled. However, he did not regret it. He had chosen to swallow the pill at the 3rd level of origin return. Even if he was refined to death by the effects of the pill today, he would not let go of it. Dignity was something that depended on strength. As for strength, he had to trade it for 100 times more than others will. It was also on this day that Xiang Nan realized what a human purgatory was. Ah! In the evening, the pinnacle of the medicinal effects. Xiang Nan finally couldn't help but open his mouth and roar angrily. He wanted to relieve some of his pain by roaring. However, the sound insulation effect here was extremely high. No one could hear a martial artist struggling with the path of martial arts and fighting spirit. The long night had finally passed, and on the morning of the 16th day, the pain on Xiang Nan's face lessened a little. Instead, it was replaced by a feeling of strength that filled his entire body. On the 17th day, the pain continued to lessen, and his strength increased again. Xiang Nan felt that his height had increased a little, reaching 1.8 meters. The muscles in his body were tougher and more powerful than before. 19th day, 23rd day, 25th day, 29th day. 30th day. Xiang Nan suddenly opened his eyes. He jumped up and punched at the top of the secret room. With a loud explosion, the invisible power within the cultivation tower neutralized the power of this punch once again. My power. After landing on the ground, Xiang Nan raised his hands and lightly clenched his fists, causing the joints of his bones to crackle. He released a yuan qi barrier in front of him and saw himself through the reflection. Right now, Xiang Nan's height had already reached 1.82 meters, nearly 10 centimeters taller than before. The body tempering pill actually had such a miraculous effect. The bigger change was that Xiang Nan looked much more mature. His sparse beard on his lips and the more resolute edges on his face fully illustrated this point. And his realm had also reached the middle stage of the 3rd level of the origin return realm. Afterwards, he took out another pill, a Tier 4 Qi refining pill. Looking at the pill, Xiang Nan recalled the pain he had suffered in the previous month. His heart skipped a beat. He really didn't want to taste the pain again. However, he raised his head and let out a long breath. He gritted his teeth and said, after suffering bitterly, I will be a master. Again. After saying that, he stuffed the pill into his mouth. Chapter 233 Wind Momentum. This last Qi condensation pill took much less time and suffering than Xiang Nan had imagined. In just 20 days, he had completely consumed the Qi condensation pill. After thinking for a while, Xiang Nan found the reason. That was because he had first refined his body, and his body strength already had a very good foundation. That was why he was able to get twice the result with half the effort. At this moment, there were still 10 days left before the 12 joint examinations. Xiang Nan had never expected that he would have 10 days left, so he began to think of a way to make full use of the last 10 days. He stood up and condensed a ball of origin energy in his palm. A martial artist must have a full understanding of his own strength in order to be able to fight a prepared battle. He could not rush up with just a heat in his head. At this moment, Xiang Nan tried his best to push the origin balloon floating above his palm to its limit. He saw that the Yuan Qi suddenly trembled violently, and the light became brighter and brighter. Only when the Yuan Qi ball of light could no longer continue to strengthen did Xiang Nan stop. Then, he monitored his own strength. In the end, he combined his Yuan Qi and strength to give a rough assessment of his current strength. In terms of overall strength, even a martial artist with the same cultivation realm would have different strengths. This was related to talent and the foundation of martial arts. If one were to quantify their overall strength and compare them with examples, it would probably be like this. If the strength of an ordinary origin returning third stage martial artist was quantified as 5, then a stronger martial artist might reach 6 or 7. Generally speaking, once a Guiyuan third layer martial artist's overall strength exceeded 5, they would be able to advance to the fourth layer of the Guiyuan realm. However, some martial artists had a very solid foundation in martial arts. He might not advance until the 6th level. If he continued to suppress his own realm, forcing himself not to advance and continuing to lay a foundation, he could at most be forced to the 7th level. This was a world of martial arts. It was generally acknowledged that 7 was a number that could be capped, and very few martial artists could break through. However, a martial artist with greater talent could break this acknowledged title, such as a powerful earth-grade talent, or even a heaven-grade talent. Wind, wood, water, fire, earth, and the 5 elements. An earth-grade innate could reach at most 8 or 9. At present, there was only one type of talent known in the entire martial world that could reach the great perfection of the 10, and that was the heavenly grade fire vein. As for Bai Mukin, who had once been called the number 1 genius under the starry sky, he had reached an astonishing 12, shocking the entire world of martial arts. This was because not only did he have heavenly grade fire veins, he also had the blessings of heavenly grade wind, wood, water, and earth pulses. In this life, Xiang Nan had accidentally awakened an even rarer talent in the lightning meridians. Let's put it this way. At this moment, Xiang Nan's overall strength had already surpassed that of Bai Mukin, who was at the peak of his cultivation realm. He had reached the 10th 5-year plan that had never been recorded in any historical documents. The lightning meridian's talent was originally even more terrifying than the fire meridian's explosive power. If it was a heavenly grade lightning meridian's, its peak comprehensive strength should be 12, but Xiang Nan's lightning meridians was the highest divine grade ever. He directly raised 12 to 15. This was Xiang Nan's current assessment of his strength. This 10th 5-year plan had already reached the super perfection stage, and he couldn't continue to rise any further no matter what. Of course, the outcome of a battle could not be determined solely by these statistics. At the same time, cultivation techniques, martial skills, combat experience, on-the-spot reactions, and even a flash of light from a duel could determine the outcome of a battle. Right now, Xiang Nan was already at the late stage of the 3rd stage of the origin return realm, only a step away from the 4th stage of the origin return realm. This step could not be taken in 10 days. Therefore, Xiang Nan gave up the idea of continuing his seclusion and left the cultivation tower for the Haran mountain range. On a tall mountain peak in the Haran mountain range, Xiang Nan stood with his hands behind his back, facing the wind. He was very clear about his strengths and weaknesses. His strength was his number 1 talent, while his weakness was that he had too few martial skills. Apart from a thunder-rushing saber, he had practically no other means of combat. Therefore, he planned to use these 10 days to create a saber technique as much as possible. Raptors swung their tails, azure dragons went out to sea, berserk dragon battle tide, and shocking dragon sunshine were not saber techniques, but skills that could be cast once. Facing the howling mountain winds, Xiang Nan muttered to himself, "I need a more efficient saber technique to cope with the situation of fighting fewer battles and more battles. Sharp blades versus weak enemies, heavy blades versus strong enemies." For ordinary people, the faster they drew their sabers, the stronger their striking power would be. However, this was not suitable for martial artists, because martial artists had even more powerful striking power, that was, accumulating strength. Xiang Nan already had a heavy saber. From the time the Azure Dragon went out to sea to the Sunshine Dragon Shocking Day, they were all typical examples of heavy sabers. As for the fast saber, it had always been something that Xiang Nan lacked. In order to preserve enough yuan qi, he was not planning to create a fast saber martial skill, but a fast saber technique. But, how can it be fast? The wind stirred the hem of Xiang Nan's robe. He slowly closed his eyes and quietly felt the mountain breeze on his face. At this moment, he maintained the same rhythm as the wind between heaven and earth. His body was slowly shaking along with the mountain wind. Everything in the world has its rhythm, and so does the wind. Xiang Nan raised his left hand and used it to catch the incoming wind. He raised his arms and used them to block the incoming wind. He made all kinds of movements to feel the rhythm of the wind in different ways and from different angles. Combined with lightning, the speed and lethality of the saber were astonishing, but the consumption was equally astonishing. Only by combining it with the wind can one achieve the goal of flowing through the clouds and flowing through the water, saving one's stamina and vitality to the greatest extent possible. Xiang Nan tilted his head slightly. He opened his arms and suddenly jumped from the top of the mountain, descending freely. He faced the strong winds whistling up the mountain, and felt the sensation of his body descending against the wind, as if he was deep in thought. At the moment when he was about to land, his body suddenly spun at full speed. He tapped his feet on the ground more than a dozen times in a row, instantly removing the force of the fall and landing calmly and smoothly. Afterwards, he spread out his yuan qi feathered wings and flew back to the top of the mountain. It is difficult to move against the wind. If you follow the wind, your saber will flow like a stream. Standing at the top of the mountain, Xiang Nan muttered to himself. If he didn't have the talent of the wind meridian attribute, how could he borrow the wind momentum? Wind meridians martial artists often poured wind-attributed energy into their bodies to increase their flexibility. Xiang Nan had done the same thing in his previous life, but what should he do when he didn't possess the talent for wind meridians? Xiang Nan stood there quietly without moving, like a stone sculpture carved on the top of a mountain. Soon, 1 day passed, and 2 days passed. Xiang Nan remained motionless, not even opening his eyes. Chapter 234 12 Sects. 3 days later, Xiang Nan opened his eyes and said to himself, "Even if I can't create the power of wind, I can borrow the power of wind. That's right, it's the momentum." Xiang Nan took a deep breath. Momentum was an abstract concept. Monarchs had the momentum of monarchs. He could not laugh or speak, but he could make civil and military officials crawl before the people of the world, making the people of the world feel reverence for a monarch. General, with the momentum of a general, he just sits there and drinks. You can also feel Shao killing qi on his body. A scholar has the power of a scroll. He doesn't need to write or paint. He just smiles at you and you can feel his erudite knowledge from the inside out. Xiang Nan had seen that when a supreme killer stood in front of him, even the wind stopped. This wasn't deliberately done by the killer, but rather caused by the killer's momentum. But, how do you create your own wind momentum? Xiang Nan closed his eyes again. He felt the wind and even compared himself to his style. Slowly, he entered a mysterious realm. He felt that he was traveling with the wind. He blew across the grasslands, mountains, and oceans with the wind, and he heard the wind blowing the leaves, and he heard the wind blowing the hills. The 4th day, the 5th day, the 6th day, and the 8th day passed. At noon on the 9th day, the mountain wind was still howling, but Xiang Nan slowly lowered his head. The moment he lowered his head, the wind stopped. This was a very strange aura field. With Xiang Nan as the center of the circle, there was not the slightest sound of wind within a radius of 10 meters, and from 10 meters away, there was still a grinning mountain breeze. On the 10th day, Xiang Nan's lowered head suddenly lifted up, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. At this moment, a strong wind rose. The wind came from the south, and the wind that surrounded Xiang Nan within a diameter of 10 meters also headed south. Two opposing winds actually appeared between heaven and earth. It was as if a clear spring had suddenly appeared in a surging eastward river. Xiang Nan held the saber in his hand and began to move on the summit of the mountain. Blades borrowed the power of the wind, and every blade flowed smoothly and accurately. Ping! Stable. Swift. He was like an elf in the wind. Every blade he slashed out was moving along the wind. With the successive changes in his footsteps, his body swam along the wind like ghost shadows. When he suddenly turned around, the wind turned again. It was still dragging him along, carrying his people and his saber. When he killed to the left, the wind turned and walked to the left. When he killed to the right, the wind turned and walked to the right. His wind was not the wind in the true sense of the word, but the wind created by momentum. This gust of wind was not affected by the mountain wind, nor was it diverted by the changes in the mountain scenery. The wind only followed Xiang Nan. Get up! Xiang Nan aimed at a giant tree on the top of the mountain and floated towards it. The tree was blown to its knees by Xiang Nan's wind. Xiang Nan's figure was unrestrained as he slashed 30 times on the tree trunk. 30 sabers, the sabers left behind clear saber marks. Xiang Nan walked around the tree, and the wind also changed. The direction the tree bent in changed. He came to the back of the tree. He was still in the wind, and the tree was still in the wind. Xiang Nan's saber danced faster and lighter. Gradually, the blade became blurry, and he saw blurry saber shadows moving in the wind. Blade move, wind move. Stop the saber, stop the wind. Xiang Nan's body turned into a shadow and swiftly swam around the tree. When he stopped, every leaf on the tree was completely broken and scattered down. Xiang Nan put away his saber and carried it behind him. Then, he took a heavy step towards the tree. As soon as he landed on the ground, a strong wind blew up. Like a wind dragon, the bare tree was uprooted and blown high into the sky along with the rocks. As for Xiang Nan's saber attack, it was still 20 meters away from the mountain rocks and the giant tree. However, the saber image flickered and a raging saber wind dragon was unexpectedly hacked out from the sky. The blade stopped, and the wind also stopped. 20 meters away in the sky, trees and rocks were ground into countless pieces. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and said, "Saber wind is done." Next, he spread out his arms and jumped from the cliff into the darkness of the lush forest below. Afterwards, he carried his saber on his back and swiftly swam through the dense trees. Dao Feng had already mastered it, and the next step was to train in Xingfeng. If a person wanted to shuttle back and forth between trees and maintain a high speed, he had to borrow the power of his waist twisting and accurately trample on the ground. However, Xiang Nan's body was entrusted by a gust of wind as he swiftly swam through it. His turning and dodging did not seem stiff at all. It was as if a gust of wind blew through the forest. The wind did not dodge the trees, it only blew the trees naturally and swept past them on both sides. In just half a day, Xiang Nan was able to move freely and swiftly through the forest with his smoothest figure. If anyone saw this scene at this moment, their eyes would definitely widen in shock. Xiang Nan did not look like a person at all, but more like a gust of gentle breeze in the shape of a human. Xiang Nan stepped on the leaves and jumped up. He gently floated into the air and left the lush sea of trees. He followed the wind and spat, "The wind is done." In Xiang Nan's heart, he named this set of saber techniques that he had used with the help of wind power, Yulong Zhu Lang. With a cultivation technique, the thunder-shocking skill used for advancement would change. The sun god technique, martial technique, and the thunder-rushing saber were 4 skills that could be used for battle. Now that he had the saber technique, he could borrow the wind to travel through the waves. Xiang Nan was confident that he could finally face the 12th sect joint examination. This time, he had to prove his strength. Thinking of this, Xiang Nan soared into the sky, and a pair of enormous Yuan Qi feathered wings spread out behind him. At the same time, a gust of wind and waves blew past behind him, following behind Xiang Nan Chao's Haran sect. After returning to the Haran sect, Xiang Nan suddenly discovered that today's sect had undergone tremendous changes. Looking around, there were densely packed crowds everywhere, and the sect was decorated with lanterns and colorful lights. Even the 5 peaks were covered with giant red banners. 5 red banners hung down from the top of the 5 slanted peaks and landed at the foot of the mountain. On the banners were words of welcome written in incomparably large ink. "The people from the 12 sects have already arrived." Xiang Nan was stunned. Indeed, more than half of the densely packed people at the foot of the mountain wore the clothes of the outer sect disciples. There were outer sect disciples everywhere, from the Haran Academy to the Credit Hall, then to the Heavenly Secrets Hall, the War God Hall, and so on. The mountainsides of the 5 secluded peaks were filled with people from top to bottom. The mountain peak was similarly packed with people. Even the normally invisible sun peak was actually filled with outer sect disciples. "How many people are here?" Xiang Nan asked in surprise. Chapter 235 A Grand Occasion in Haran Sect. Didn't he say that there were only 12 sects here? Could it be that the 12 sects had all come out to watch the competition of the Haran Sect? The Haran Sect had never been so lively before. For a moment, Xiang Nan was unable to find an acquaintance to inquire about it. All of the people who came face to face with him were unfamiliar faces. "Look! That's the Credit Hall of the Haran Sect." "Ah! Really? Were many of the super missions that shocked the Hautian Empire released from this place?" On the other side. "Ah! It's the Haran Academy. Oh my God, is this the place where the disciples of the famous Haran sect learn?" Hiss. "Huh, I sucked in a mouthful of air from the Haran Academy. I feel as if I have also sublimated." On the other side. "Heavens, are those the 5 secluded peaks that shake the heavens? The Saber sect, Sword sect, Qi sect, and Pill Tool sect are all here. What a spectacular sight. What kind of sect is that Pianfeng? How come I've never heard of him before?" Xiang Nan was dumbfounded as he watched the performance of the outer sect disciples. He was a little caught off guard. "Huh, Xiang Nan, there you are." A familiar voice rang out. Xiang Nan turned around and finally saw a familiar face. Li Jian squeezed his way over from the crowd and said beside Xiang Nan, "Look, isn't it lively? It's like a festival. So many disciples from the 12 sects have come." Xiang Nanqi asked. Li Jian shook his head speechlessly and sighed, "Are you a Haran sect disciple or not? Why can't you figure out the situation in our sect with such a big matter? This time, it is indeed the 12 sects joint examination, but more than 50 sects of all sizes have come." Xiang Nan's eyes widened in shock. What are those superfluous sects doing here? Li Jian said speechlessly, "Of course I'm here to visit. This is the first round of the 12 sects joint examination. Those sects that weren't selected to the 12 sects also came to watch the battle. By the way, I want to experience the Haoran sect's background. That's why." Only then did Xiang Nan understand. After answering Li Jian's questions, Xiang Nan finally understood that out of the 11 sects that came this time, there were 8 second-class sects and 3 third-class sects that were specially chosen to take care of him. They are Qinyan sect, Blazing Fire sect, White-Clothed sect, Guihai sect, Jingmen sect, Quicksand sect, Huangtian sect and Wind Moon sect. Cavalry sect, White Sword sect, Feihom sect. This joint examination of the 12 sects was the first time the Haran sect had opened its doors. Not only were more than 50 martial practitioners from the sects allowed to enter, but many influential figures from the aristocratic families and clans of Haotian City and even Donghai province, as well as the people from the military, had also arrived. Xiang Nan was dumbfounded. He knew that the Haoran sect was going to hold a big event, but he didn't expect it to be so big. Li Jian put his elbow on Xiang Nan's head and said, "This is a great opportunity for the 12 sects to get into the top 16 of the exam. If they can get into the top 16 of the exam, they might become famous all over the world overnight." Xiang Nan nodded thoughtfully. It might be a bit exaggerated to say that he had made such a big move this time, but it was certain that he would become famous among many sects. Right at this moment, a burst of screams suddenly came from within the credit hall. "Wow! Look, the first place on the Eagle rankings is actually a team with only one person. Don't talk nonsense, how could there be such a thing? Holy shit! Really? The Suns, who are ranked first on the Eagle rankings, actually only have one member. It's too chaotic." Xiang Nan's mind was buzzing with noise. He hurriedly bid farewell to Li Jian and hid back at his own Sun Peak. It might be quieter there. There were too many people. Xiang Nan had to put in a lot of effort to squeeze up to the foot of Sun Peak and climb up. He didn't dare to unfold his Yuan Qi feathered wings here. Otherwise, he would definitely receive even more cries of alarm. Perhaps he would be pulled down by someone. Ask him how the Yuan Qi feathered wings condensed. This might really be the case. However, just as Xiang Nan was about to squeeze up to the summit, a tsunami-like scream came from above the high clouds. Countless people standing on the mountain and on the arch bridge between the mountains cried out in unison. Waves after waves of cries rushed over, causing Xiang Nan's mind to buzz. "So beautiful! Who is that?" Countless people cried out in alarm. The chaotic waves of people pointed at a figure slowly flying in the sky. Heavens, there is such a beautiful woman in this world. Which academy is she from? Could she be the senior sister of a 6th grade academy? Quickly shut your stinking mouth. Don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. That's the Peak Master of Sun Peak. Sun Peak was also filled with people. Even Sun Palace, which used to be a rare place, was filled with spectating outer sect disciples. Su Kaiyu was really annoyed. She could only bring the little bird and head towards the Haran palace. That was the only place where the elders of the Haran sect lived in peace. Xiang Nan watched as his master left. He immediately burst into tears and laughter in his heart. Where should he go? Of course, other than the outer sect disciples who were watching and shouting, there were also some people in the Haran sect who were truly willing to learn something. Many outer sect disciples squeezed into Tianji Hall to visit the books. Although most of the books were closed, they were still holding a few books that could be read by outsiders, and they were intoxicated with them. In Haran Academy, every school was packed with outer sect disciples. Some even peeked through the windows in the corridor and listened to the Haran sect instructors teach their lessons. Xiang Nan thought that this was a good thing. This event organized by the Haran sect allowed the various sects to exchange experiences, allowing the outer sect disciples to learn a lot of knowledge that they could not learn from the Haran sect. In the evening, the number of people from the Haran sect instantly dropped by more than half, leaving behind all the disciples of the sect. Apart from the sect, the ordinary citizens and some members of the clans who came to visit Haotian City had to leave the arena. However, the liveliness here did not diminish at all. It was above the main peak, outside the Haoran Palace. The disciples of more than 50 sects sat neatly on the ground. They looked at the dark and endless crowd. Even the elders of those sects were sitting in front of the disciples. All of them were serious as they listened to Elder Shi Beihong preaching at the entrance of the Haoran Palace. The so-called martial Tao is the power to serve the heavens, so as to strengthen one's body, break away from the mortal body, and achieve the good fortune of the heavens. There were more than 100,000 disciples on such a large mountain. At this moment, there was actually no noise at all. In the entire Haran Peak, there was only Elder Shi Beihong's vast and solemn sermon voice. Xiang Nan came late and had no seats left. He could only go to the arch bridge and squeeze in with some other outer sect disciples. After Elder Shi Beihong explained a few paragraphs, he smiled and waved his hand. Let me introduce a person to everyone. This person must have been seen by everyone, right? As he spoke, a curvy, heaven-defying woman with long legs leisurely walked over. The woman stood beside Elder Shi Beihong and smiled at the crowd. Welcome to the Haran sect. Whoosh! The scene exploded. It's senior sister Xue Qi. I saw her when she came to our sect for a lecture. Ah, I've seen it before. I've even talked to senior sister Xue Qi for a while. Bullshit. With your status, how can you climb up to someone like senior sister Xue Qi? I heard that she is one of the most influential figures in the Haran sect. Chapter 236 Meet an old friend in another country. After Shi Beihong finished speaking, he handed the scene to Mu Sueki. From this, it could be seen that the Haran sect really wanted to cultivate Mu Sueki vigorously and let her become the spokesperson for the Haran sect's disciples. On the other hand, Mu Sueki had already selected a group of outstanding Haran sect disciples. They formed a group of disciples and directly walked together with the outer sect disciples to discuss the martial arts spirit at close range. At this moment, it was not as quiet as Elder Shi Beihong's sermon. Everyone became chaotic and squeezed in one by one. Many disciples had written down their questions about martial arts and were eager to ask questions. Naturally, Xiang Nan would not join in on such a chaotic scene. He intended to return to Sun Palace to rest. Is that Xiang Nan? At this moment, a familiar voice sounded. Xiang Nan was delighted and looked in the direction of the lecture. He shouted, "Elder Yu." It was indeed Elder Yu of the cavalry sect. Elder Yu brought a group of cavalry sect disciples over and said happily, "Xiang Nan, it's really you." Xiang Nan hurriedly knelt on one knee and cupped his fists. Xiang Nan is too busy with martial arts to visit Elder Yu at the cavalry gate. Please don't blame him. Hurry up and say something out of the ordinary. Elder Yu smiled from ear to ear. He hurriedly helped Xiang Nan up and sized him up. He said, "Good child, I can't recognize you when I grow up." Xiang Nan's height had undergone an earth-shaking change. Earlier in Bluestone City, he was only about 1.7 meters tall. Now, he was 1.82 meters tall. He was also 17 years old. Looking at Elder Yu's recovered left arm, Xiang Nan said excitedly, "Seeing your health, this junior is relieved. I heard that there are also cavalry sects in the 12-sect joint examination. You are leading your disciples to participate in the competition, right?" Elder Yu smiled and said, "It was because the Haran sect took special care of the third-grade sects that we got our spots. Otherwise, why would it be our turn to come over? After all, there are still dozens of second-grade sects that have been defeated. Come, a few of your acquaintances have also arrived this time. Quickly come and meet them." Just as he was speaking, a great shadow strode over from the crowd behind Elder Yu. "Huh, Xiang Nan, it's really you." Xiang Nan suddenly looked up and was even more overjoyed. "Mo Hai." Mo Hai patted Xiang Nan on the shoulder vigorously and said, "I knew we would meet again one day. Look, old Chuan has also come. The two of us met up earlier." Sure enough, a person squeezed over from Mo Hai's side. That person came up and hugged Xiang Nan's neck. He said affectionately, "Little bastard, I miss you so much." This person was Li Qingchuan, who had always followed Mo Hai and entered the White Sword sect. Xiang Nan hugged Mo Hai and Li Qingchuan and laughed loudly, "Drink. It's my treat." Elder Yu smiled and said, "You youngsters go, I won't participate." After bidding farewell to Elder Yu, the three of them left the Haoran sect and immediately ran to the Drunken Dream Pavilion. The three of them rented a small courtyard of the Heaven brand and set up a large table of drinks and dishes. However, when the three of them picked up their wine glasses together, they were all silent again. The rims of their eyes were all red. After a long time, Mo Hai sighed with emotion, "After coming out, I finally know how big the world is." Yes. Li Qingchuan also sighed with emotion, "I really missed the days when we were together with Brother Hai. Now that we meet again in the horizon, I really can't help but sigh." "Don't say anything, let's do it." Xiang Nan raised his head and drank a large bowl of liquor. In Bluestone City, a total of 3 of the most promising people had walked out. When they reunited today, all grievances and grudges had been put aside. All they had was cherished feelings. This was always the case. No matter how unpleasant things were in their hometowns, after everyone went out and traveled in the vast world, they would feel that there was no gap between them when they saw their hometowns who had once fought with them fiercely and forcefully. "Brat, what realm are you at now?" Mo Hai laughed and asked Xiang Nan, "I'm already at the 3rd level of the Origin Return stage, and Qing Chuan has also reached the 2nd level of the Origin Return stage." Xiang Nan smiled and said, "I have just arrived at the 3rd level of the Origin realm." "Holy shit, can it be?" Li Qingchuan widened his eyes and said in shock, "It's reasonable for Mo Hai to reach the 3rd level of Origin Return. After all, he was already at the half-step Origin Return realm during the city selection. But you brat, during the city selection, you were only at the 6th level of the Xiantian realm. It's a bit of a fantasy for you to raise your cultivation level." Mo Hai smiled and said, "You have forgotten that Xiang Nan was promoted to the 9th level of the Xiantian realm before the end of the city selection. However, his current speed is indeed a bit scary. Xiang Nan said, it can only be said that the resources of the Haran sect are richer. I have also been touched by the glory of the Haran sect. At this moment, Mo Hai and Li Qingchuan exchanged glances, both of them smiling strangely. What? Xiang Nan asked, you two have something to hide from me? Brother Hai, tell me. Li Qingchuan said. Mo Hai laughed heartily. When the Haran sect came to inspect and lecture, we already agreed that if Qingchuan and I can get into the top 100 in the joint examination of the 12 sects, we will be allowed to enter the Haran sect. Really? Xiang Nan suddenly stood up. There was nothing better than this good news. Li Qingchuan said excitedly, really? The cavalry sect and the white sword sect are willing to help me and Mo Hai. Haha. Xiang Nan raised his wine bowl and said, I'm happy today. I won't return until I'm drunk. Right. After drinking for a while, Mo Hai suddenly thought of something and said in a deep voice, Xiang Nan, Wang Xiaoyun has already reached the 7th level of the origin reversion realm. Do you know about this? Xiang Nan said, I think he should have reached this realm as well, but it doesn't matter. I still have more than a year to catch up with him. He is quite tactful. Li Qingchuan chuckled and said, Wang Xiaoyun knows that he has a bad relationship with you, so he hasn't come to the Haran sect this time. I'm afraid that you will make things difficult for him after he comes. Alright, let's not talk about them anymore. Let's drink ours. At this moment, a large group of people passed by noisily from outside. One of them caught a glimpse of Xiang Nan through the corner of his eye as he walked through the distance. He immediately stopped, and the crowd that followed him also stopped. What's wrong, old Jiang? Did you meet someone you know? Someone in the crowd asked. Jiang Cheng stared coldly at Xiang Nan from afar and said, this is truly a narrow path for enemies. When Xiang Nan saw Jiang Cheng, he immediately felt an incomparable headache. His headache was not Jiang Cheng, but this damn drunken dream pavilion. Why would he encounter something every time he came to this place? Could it be that his life was incompatible with drunken dream pavilion? How many times has this happened? Can't you change the game? What's wrong, old Jiang? Are you and that brat on bad terms? The fellow in the crowd saw the displeasure on Jiang Cheng's face. What? Something. Mo Hai and Li Qingchuan slapped the table and stood up. The two of them weren't ordinary people. In the past, it was the two of them who caused trouble for Xiang Nan, but now that they saw someone else cause trouble for Xiang Nan, they felt unhappy in their hearts. Chapter 237 Pre-Competition Examination. Old Jiang, I heard that you are an amazing figure in the Nature's Nature sect. Why do you still dare to have someone fight against you? The crowd immediately shouted out loudly. Xiang Nan looked over and saw that most of the disciples who followed Jiang Cheng were outer sect disciples, so he knew what was going on. Jiang Cheng was definitely going to treat his fellow countrymen to a banquet at the Drunken Dream Pavilion, just like himself. The 12-sect joint examination was an unprecedented gathering. People from various sects had come, so everyone would definitely meet their fellow countrymen. Obviously, those outer sect disciples should have come from the same place as Jiang Cheng. They also knew that Jiang Cheng was doing well in the Haran sect. At this moment, he was acting like a fox and using Jiang Cheng's limelight to show that he was not afraid of the heavens or the earth. Heh! Jiang Cheng stared into Xiang Nan's eyes and sneered, just him. He's not worthy of being my enemy. He's just a useless piece of trash. When the outer sect disciples heard this, they immediately started to heckle. Someone shouted, go in. Raise their tables. Xiang Nan also stood up. When Mo Hai and Li Qingchuan heard their conversation, they were already extremely unhappy and were ready to make a move. At this time, a loud shout suddenly came from the distance outside the door. "What are you doing squeezing on the road? Get lost! What the hell are you talking about? Keep your mouth clean. Do you know who this is?" An outer sect disciple shouted at the person cursing. "Is this the #1 expert of the second stage academy of the Haran sect, Jiangqing? Scram! Otherwise, I'll slash you with my sword." The person who cursed was not afraid at all. Instead, he was getting more and more impatient. Jiangqing turned his head and looked over. His face immediately turned pale. He hurriedly said to his fellow countrymen, "Let's go. We won't cause any trouble today." Jiangqing made a cowardly turtle and ran away with a large group of people. Xiang Nan was still curious. Why did the voice of the cursing person sound so familiar? When those people passed by the gate of the courtyard, Xiang Nan immediately recognized them. "Ha! Luo Yuan, Luo Fei." When the people passing by the door stopped, they all turned around. It was the two brothers from the Luo clan. No wonder Jiangqing was suddenly scared. The person cursing the streets was actually the general of Beijiang border city, Luo Fei. The Hautian Empire's soldiers were mostly like this. They didn't dare to laugh and talk in the army, so serious that it made people scared. However, when they came out to play in their personal capacity, it was a different story. Moreover, Luo Fei was only a young man who wasn't even 30 years old. "So it's Xiang Nan." Luo Fei also laughed and said, "Coincidentally, there are fewer people on your side. Let's sit together." Everyone immediately added a few tables and sat together. Luo Yuan said, "Xiang Nan, did Jiangqing want to trouble you again when he stopped here just now?" "What? It's going against him." Luo Fei slapped the table and shouted, "Xiang Nan is a good brother who died with me. Let's go. Find that Jiangqing, I must pick his tendons today." Xiang Nan hurriedly stopped him and smiled. "Big brother Luo Fei is like a different person today." "Hi, I'm just here to play." Luo Fei sat down with his golden saber and said, "It was more than a month since we fought against the heavenly devil religion. The higher-ups were grateful for our hard work and gave us a few days off. I just happened to be praising the holidays. Wait until today to see Luo Yuan and cheer him on." These two are Luo Yuan looked at Mo Hai and Li Qingchuan. "Let me introduce you." Xiang Nan hurriedly stood up and said, "These two are good friends from my hometown. This is Mo Hai, and this is Li Qingchuan. Those are all my own brothers, so I won't be able to see them anymore." Luo Fei picked up the wine bowl and said, "What are you waiting for? Drink." After everyone drank heavily, Luo Yuan said, "Xiang Nan, I've heard that Jiangqing and Hongbin have already held back their strength and are going to cause trouble for you during the 12-sect joint examination. I didn't know that you and my brother fought against the heavenly devil religion together. Now that we know, we are all our own. In the past few days, if they dare to look for trouble with you again, just say hello. I, Luo Yuan, will be the first to stand up and help you." "Thank you." Xiang Nan smiled and said, "But it doesn't matter. If they want to come, they can come. You really can cause trouble." A group of people passed by the entrance of the courtyard. One of them saw Xiang Nan and directly walked in. This person also came to entertain her fellow countrymen, Muron Wanqing. She first asked her friends to go to the designated courtyard, while she walked in. "As soon as I passed by, I heard about your contradictions. Then Muron Wanqing was not polite either. She pulled up a chair and sat down, saying, "Xiang Nan, I find that it seems that wherever you go, you will offend a large number of people. I have the most say in this matter." Li Qingchuan stood up with the wine bowl in his hand and said, "Because Brother Hai and I have been targeting Xiang Nan in the past." At this point, Xiang Nan smiled and said, "It's all over. Let's not talk about it anymore." Li Qingchuan shook his head and said, "Xiang Nan was never a troublemaker, but he refused to lower his head. There are only two ways to avoid conflict with others. One is to hold his tail and lower his head. The other is to join them in the pollution. However, Xiang Nan will not choose either." "Well said." Luo Fei slapped the table and said, "What a good sentence. I refuse to lower my head. That's what men want." A single sentence aroused the bloodlust in the man's bones. It was not that Xiang Nan liked to cause trouble everywhere, but that Mu Xiu was destroyed by Lin Feng. It was only because Xiang Nan had risen too quickly and his temper was too stubborn. Muron Wanqing was also speechless. Previously, she was not used to seeing Xiang Nan because Xiang Nan was nameless. How could a wild boy dare to resist authority? That was why she, Muron Wanqing, was targeting Xiang Nan, but after that, she was also touched by Xiang Nan's backbone. What Qing Chuan said is absolutely correct. Mo Hai smiled and said, "It's not that Xiang Nan likes to cause trouble. It's us, the so-called strong people, who used to be unable to tolerate a prick like him. In the end, we are still afraid that he will surpass us. Come, drink." Xiang Nan picked up his wine bowl and drank with everyone. After a lively night of celebration, everyone returned to the Haran sect to rest, and the next day was the pre-competition exam for the 12 sect examinations. Apart from the Haran sect, the other 11 sects had already passed the audition. There were only 1,100 disciples from the other sects who had come to participate in the joint examination of the 12 sections. Each sect had 100 disciples participating in the competition. As for Haran Zhongguang's second stage academy, there were 3,000 people. This was obviously not enough. Therefore, the pre-competition exam was Haran Zhongguang's own pre-competition elimination tournament. On this day, 3,000 disciples of the second grade academy gathered at Haran Peak, and 3,000 people sat down neatly. Apart from them, the people from more than 50 sects had also arrived, all of them wishing to see for themselves how the nature sect had selected them. "Do you think Xiang Nan can pass?" On the arch bridge in the distance, Li Qingchuan said worriedly, "Their selection for the Haran sect must be much stricter than ours. If they lose in the southern election, that would be incomparably terrible." Mo Hai said, "Don't worry, don't you know Xiang Nan? He always gives us surprises." At this moment, Elder Shi Beihong shouted in front of the Hao Ran Hall, "The pre-competition examination of the Hao Ran sect has officially begun. This time, 200 disciples will be selected from among the 3,000 disciples to participate in the 12 sects. Joint examination." Hearing this, the expressions of many second-grade students changed drastically. Of the 3,000 people, only 200 were chosen. Isn't that going to eliminate 2,800 people? This elimination rate is too terrifying. First round, written examination. Elder Shi Beihong smiled. Hearing the words, written examination, the scene was filled with grief. Chapter 238. I'll let you do it. This time, not only did the disciples of the Haran sect complain repeatedly, even the 50-plus outer sect disciples were extremely surprised. Apart from the Haran sect, how could other sects possibly test out any martial arts theories? What the Haoran sect disciples feared the most was the written exam. They really couldn't be blamed for this, because their ability to act was completely different from their ability to use their brains. Even if some martial artists were really willing to work hard to learn, they might not be able to learn anything. After all, they were martial artists with outstanding physical fitness, not scholars. Elder Shi Beihong smiled and pressed down his hands, saying, "Everyone, don't panic. The written part of the exam will only be recorded as bonus points and will not be eliminated. Furthermore, the written part only gets 20 points, and the martial part gets 80 points. In the end, the top 200 will be won." Hearing this, the Haoran sect disciples smiled happily and relaxed a lot. "Alright, then, I'm going to start asking questions." As Elder Shi Beihong spoke, he took a step back. Elder Shi Beihong circulated his yuan qi and pushed out a palm with his right hand. After this palm was released, the yuan qi condensed into an oval-shaped yuan qi shield. This yuan qi shield was very unusual. It was divided into 3 layers, forming a sandwich shape. The inner and outer layers were solid yuan qi in a solidified state, and the middle layer was a flowing yuan qi. That yuan qi was flowing in a circular shape, extremely miraculous. When Xiang Nan saw this, he nodded slightly. This time, the written examination was much more difficult for Bit and the others. At best, the lotus flower in the last written examination only condensed yuan qi into a fixed shape. Elder Shi Beihong pointed at the yuan qi shield floating in the air and said, "With this shield as the title, please write down your own incantations. It will only take 10 hours. If it is completed within 1 hour, the total score will be 20 points. In 2 hours, it will be 18 points. In 3 hours, it will be 16 points. It will decrease in turn." The outer sect elders and disciples were all extremely shocked. Then, Shi Beihong had only released such a yuan qi shield to let the disciples write their heart force incantations. As expected of the nature sect. Elder Menu nodded slightly. Xiang Nan carefully observed the oval-shaped yuan qi shield for a while before lowering his head and starting to write. Murong Wanqing and the others immediately focused on looking at Xiang Nan. Seeing that Xiang Nan had already started writing, they felt extremely helpless. This Nan is simply a freak. Luo Yuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Later, many disciples began to meditate bitterly, occasionally raising their heads to look at the yuan qi shield, and occasionally lowering their heads to ponder. The scene was extremely quiet. The outer sect disciples didn't dare to utter a single word. They didn't believe that someone could use a yuan qi shield that they had never seen before in 10 hours, or even write out a mental incantation. At this moment, a person suddenly stood up in the crowd. This person had a calm and confident smile on his face. It was Jiang Qing. Everyone was sitting, and he was the only one who suddenly stood up, even though he attracted the attention of the vast majority of people. Jiang Qing walked slowly through the gaps between the disciples and smiled confidently. The so-called heart arts oral art is to teach martial artists how to circulate their yuan qi in their meridians in a specific way to achieve different purposes. Different movements of yuan qi can make yuan qi appear completely different. It can be as soft as flocks, or as hard as steel, or it can be transformed into different shapes and objects. When the disciples heard Jiang Qing's long speech, they began to listen earnestly. "Is that Jiang Qing? I've heard of him. I heard that he is one of the best experts in the second-grade academy." Some outer sect disciples began to whisper. "Yeah, look at him. Not only is he handsome, he is also so knowledgeable." Some of the female disciples' eyes glittered with small stars. Mo Hai and Li Qingchuan exchanged glances. Li Qingchuan curled his lips and said, "This guy loves acting so much. Everyone is taking the exam, so he has to come out and talk loudly. It seems that he is very capable." Jiang Qing continued, "As for the luck shield, it can be roughly divided into 3 types. The first type is a pure Yuan Qi condensed shield. This type of shield only possesses the strength of Yuan Qi itself and has no bonus. The second type is a reinforced Yuan Qi shield. Through a special technique, the strength of the shield far exceeds the strength of Yuan Qi itself. It can defend against the Yuan Qi attacks of experts of the same level. The third type is a non-solid shield. There are many types of shields. Most of them are not used to resist the enemy's attacks. The purpose is to neutralize, deflect, or even absorb them." The male outer sect disciples were dumbfounded when they heard this. They felt convinced, while the female disciples couldn't help but scream softly. However, when they thought that this was an important place in the examination room, they quickly covered their mouths with their screams. As for the outer sect elders and mentors, they nodded their heads repeatedly, their eyes filled with admiration. Teachers, like, love to see students appreciate those who actively express their opinions, take the initiative to show their own people. Even Mu Sueki, who was in charge of invigilating the exam, had a smile on her face. Although she did not like Jiang Qing, she had to admit that Jiang Qing was very outstanding now. The elders liked the students who loved to show themselves, and the female disciples liked this kind of person even more. The difficulty of this shield is. Jiang Qing held his chin and pondered. It is made up of 2 completely different forms of Yuan Qi. A martial artist releases one-off Yuan Qi, either solid, strengthened solid, fluid, or condensed fluid. How can I do that? Within a single move, it's the most difficult thing to release a layer of fluid Yuan Qi in the middle of a double solid Yuan Qi. You can see that the inner and outer layers of solid elemental energy are used to strengthen the defense, while the middle layer of fluid elemental energy is used to disrupt the attack. So, what we need to think about is, while Jiang Qing spoke confidently, enjoying everyone's admiration, enjoying the praise of the elders, a figure suddenly walked past Jiang Qing. "Elder, I'm done." This person was Xiang Nan. He held a copy of the answer sheet that had been written with a mental incantation and respectfully handed it over to Elder Shibeihong. At that moment, all the disciples in the arena began to speak with their mouths wide open. On the other hand, Jiang Qing, who was proud of himself, froze on the spot like he had been struck by lightning. "Ha ha ha ha, I'm sorry, I can't help it anymore." Li Qingchuan covered his mouth and laughed incessantly. His laughter was extremely ear-piercing, especially in Jiang Qing's ears. It was like a slap on his face. "I'll let you act. You screwed up, you shameless bastard." Li Qingchuan lowered his voice and cursed softly. Chapter 239b at the top of the list. Jiang Qing was embarrassed. He directly flaunted himself as the most outstanding disciple, and even faked his appearance to stand out, helping everyone analyze the difficulty of this shield. In the end, even before he could analyze it thoroughly, Xiang Nan had already handed in the paper. If there was anything in the world that could make a person want to commit suicide in embarrassment, this scene must be one of them. The most ironic thing was that after Xiang Nan handed in his answer sheet, he even turned around to look at Jiang Qing and asked curiously, Senior brother, why aren't you answering the questions properly? Why are you walking around here?" Jiang Qing was so angry that he gritted his teeth and whispered, "Xiang Nan. Remember that." In front of him, Elder Shibeihong checked Xiang Nan's answer sheet and nodded, completely correct. There is no deviation in the slightest. It will take 7 minutes, and you will get a full score of 20 points. Whoosh! The entire hall was in a state of turmoil. Xiang Nan had only used 7 minutes to write out his mental art mantra. What kind of terrifying martial comprehension was this? This time, the focus of everyone's attention immediately changed from Jiang Qing to Xiang Nan. You can't just practice your mouth. You need to have real talent and practical knowledge. Mu Sueki's expression also changed very quickly. She looked at Xiang Nan and nodded repeatedly. People were afraid of comparison. From the looks of it, a Jiang Cheng had been talking without hesitation for a long time, but he hadn't written a single word yet. A Xiang Nan did his work in a down-to-earth manner and directly handed in his answer paper. In comparison, Jiang Cheng felt like a hypocritical clown. Please demonstrate your mantra on the spot. Elder Shi Beihong's eyes were filled with gratification. Xiang Nan took a step forward and pushed with his right hand. A surge of yuan qi immediately condensed into an oval-shaped shield. That shield was indeed 3 layers. Although the sturdiness of the inner and outer layers was not good enough, and the flow of yuan qi in the middle was not flexible enough, it was only a matter of temperature. At this point in time, everyone was filled with admiration for Xiang Nan's performance. Seeing this, Jiang Cheng's shameless mood rose again. He gritted his teeth and said, "Xiang Nan, you cheated." This was the case with this kind of person. He could only allow himself to show off and never allow others to steal his limelight. If he succeeded in showing off, he would pretend to be humble, and when he accepted everyone's praise, he would repeatedly say, "No, no, I just worked harder than others." However, if someone else stole his limelight, he would immediately go berserk and show his ugliness. "Senior brother, may I ask where I cheated?" Xiang Nan asked. Jiang Qing said angrily, "You must have practiced this move before. I don't believe that you can comprehend such a complicated yuan qi shield in 7 minutes. Everyone, tell me, am I right?" Jiang Qing turned around and shouted. Indeed, there were indeed some outer sect elders who were suspicious of this, but they didn't say anything else and just waited for the situation to develop. However, at this moment, quite a few people had already begun to dislike Jiang Qing. Xiang Nan nodded and pulled out the huge saber. "What are you doing? Do you still want to make a move in anger and embarrassment?" Jiang Qing said angrily. Whoosh! What a big saber! The outer sect disciples cried out in surprise at the exaggerated shape of the giant black scale saber. Xiang Nan's arm trembled and the giant saber began to buzz. He said, "You can see clearly that I used the saber. I believe that every weapon has its own spirit and soul. And the spirit of the saber is to move forward without stopping. Those who use the saber can only take the offensive path. There is absolutely no reason for them to retreat." Xiang Nan swung the giant saber twice and said, "Let alone that I have never practiced any shield-type martial skill, even if I do have this kind of martial skill in front of me, I will not practice it. Because I can't give myself a reason to be timid. Senior brother Jiang Cheng, if I remember correctly, you should be from Dongyang Peak and Saber sect, right? If you don't even understand the spirit of the saber, I think you might need to change factions." "What are you talking about?" Jiang Cheng said angrily. Xiang Nan put away his great saber and walked towards his seat. As he passed Jiang Cheng, he said indifferently, "I advise you to spend more time writing your answers instead of trying to show off yourself." With that, Xiang Nan walked straight away. "Well said." Li Qingchuan shouted and applauded loudly. He had long since disliked Jiang Cheng, who was acting like a makeup model. At this moment, he felt extremely happy in his heart. The crowd applauded loudly. Elder Yu nodded in relief. I've never seen wrong about Xiang Nan. I know. In the following period of time, Jiang Cheng was fiercely slapped by Xiang Nan, and he didn't have the face to continue to publish his lengthy comments. He went back to write his own mantra in a dejected manner. Within 4 hours, not a single person was able to successfully hand in their papers like Xiang Nan. On the other hand, there were more than a dozen people who handed in their papers, but the results were verified. There was a deviation in their incantations, and they were unable to succeed, so they were rejected to rewrite them. Actually, this Yuan Qi shield was not complicated, because it was clearly layered, and one could tell the truth at a glance. However, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for disciples to write out a mental art mantra simply by observing it with their eyes. If comprehending a martial skill was really that simple, who in the world would dare to casually use a martial skill? After being learned with a single glance, where did the preciousness of that martial skill manual manifest itself? Only in the 5th hour did one person hand in the correct answer. And this person was Murong Wanqing. She won the 2nd place and scored 12 points. When she returned, she looked at Xiang Nan weakly. She did not want to compete with Xiang Nan in the written examination. Afterwards, another disciple finished their answers one after another. The 3rd place was surprised by an unfamiliar student who had short hair and lowered his head from beginning to end, leaving almost no impression on him. Xiang Nan had never seen that person before, and even the student had always lowered his head, making it difficult to see his face clearly. However, this person left a deep impression on Xiang Nan, because this student had an unfathomable feeling. This person, who was only 10 minutes late for Murong Wanqing to hand in her answer paper, was still within 5 hours and scored 12 points. After that, the 4th place was occupied by swordsman Feng Zhaoqi, who took 6 hours, and the 5th place was occupied by Shenlin Hai, who took 6 hours. Luo Yuan won 6th place and Jiang Yu 7th place. Surprisingly, the expert Hong Bin only won 8th place, followed by Zhou Xianyong. 10 hours later, there were more than 120 people who had successfully handed in their papers, but nearly 100 of them had barely managed to complete them in the last hour. In other words, there were more than 2,800 students who obtained 0 points in this competition. The second test. Elder Shi Beihong signaled for everyone to be quiet and said, "Start immediately." Chapter 241 Mountain Rock. Elder Shi Beihong waved his right hand and a mountain rock suddenly rose from the flat floor. This mountain rock is only 2 meters tall and less than a meter thick. Elder Shi Beihong pointed at the mountain stone and said, "The second round of the martial examination is very simple. It is to push this mountain stone forward. The farthest one gets 80 full marks based on the distance, and then it decreases 1 by 1. An outer sect disciple who came to watch the show asked curiously, "What is there to push this little stone?" It was thrown into the sky with a casual throw. This is also considered an exam. Someone whispered, "What the hell do you know? Can it be that simple? There must be something inside. I'll go first." This time, the first person to stand out was no longer Jiang Cheng, but a disciple of a 2nd-grade academy. Jiang Cheng had already learned his lesson from the last time. He had to observe silently and keep his eyes open. The disciple who signed up first stepped forward and used both of his hands to press against the rock, then pushed forward forcefully. With a rumble, the mountain rock moved, leaving behind a shallow scratch on the ground. It was pushed about an inch. The corners of the disciple's mouth slightly rose as he said confidently, "It's not that difficult." As he spoke, he continued to push forward, but his expression immediately changed, because he discovered that there was something strange in this mountain rock, and it was getting heavier and heavier. It was quite easy to push the first inch, but when it reached the second inch, the weight of the mountain rock seemed to have doubled all of a sudden. Pushing to the third inch, the difficulty of pushing continued to rise. When the disciple pushed it to a distance of half a meter, he felt that this mountain rock had an indescribably terrifying weight. Even if the veins on his forehead jumped violently, the mountain rock did not move a single bit. Primordial Dipper Chi. The disciple let out a loud roar and released the Yuan Qi in his body. Immediately after, the mountain rocks were pushed forward with a rumble. He gritted his teeth and exerted all of his strength to suck milk, but the speed of the mountain rock's advance was reduced by an inverse proportion. Until he pushed the mountain rock a meter away, even Primordial Dipper Chi could no longer help him, and the mountain rock completely stopped. I can't push anymore. The disciple heaved a sigh of relief and put his hands down. Everyone could see that his arms were trembling non-stop. It was obvious that his strength had exceeded his limit. Immediately after, the second, third, and 10th disciples pushed forward one by one. However, in the end, the person with the best score pushed the mountain rock by 1.5 meters, while the person with the worst score pushed it by less than a meter. This time, none of the true experts took the initiative to step forward. Hong Bin, Zhou Xianyong, and the others, Xiang Nan Muron Wanqing and the others, were watching closely from behind. Continue. After more than 2,900 people had tried it all out, the rest of the crowd was Xiang Nan and the rest of the top experts. At this time, the best result was 2 meters, and the worst result was only half a meter. Of course, this half meter of terrifying data came from the fortune peak. At this moment, Xiang Nan and the others looked at each other as if they wanted to determine who was going to experiment next. I'll do it. The short-haired man bowed his head and volunteered to go up. At this moment, many people had already begun to pay attention to him. This man was very white, and could even be said to be morbidly pale. Moreover, his body was relatively thin and weak, and he did not seem to be a martial artist. Up until now, everyone only knew his name as Yi Dong. Yi Dong lowered his head and walked to the mountain rock. He actually used his left hand to press against the mountain rock. Is he left-handed? Luo Yuan asked curiously. Everyone else uses both hands, but he only uses one hand. Yi Dong lowered his head and pushed the rock forward with a rumble. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The mountain rock in Yi Dong's hand seemed to have no weight at all. As he pushed forward, there was no change in speed, and he continued to move forward smoothly. Moreover, the most shocking thing was that from the surface, Yi Dong could not be seen exerting any strength at all. He looked like he was walking every day. However, the mountain rock had already been pushed out by a meter smoothly. Normally, no matter how powerful a student was, they would still have to release their own techniques to shake the rocks, but Yi Dong did not. The mountain stones were still moving forward. It was already 1.5 meters. Yi Dong was expressionless, and the muscles on his arm did not move. He continued to walk with his legs. What? Could there be a problem with the mountain stones? Li Qingchuan shouted. Everyone looked at Shi Beihong, but Elder Shi Beihong didn't say anything, indicating that everything was normal. Still moving forward. Xiang Nan's expression became solemn. He has pushed the mountain stones 2 meters away. 2 meters, this distance had already broken the previous record of more than 2,900 people, surpassing the second place by half a meter. Only at this moment did the mountain rock slowly stop. Yi Dong was still as calm as ever, but when he saw the yuan qi in his body suddenly surge, his entire body was enveloped in a crazily rising yuan qi wave. That yuan qi seemed to have sprayed out from the ground, engulfing Yi Dong's entire body. Qi sect. Jiang Yu was also a member of the Qi sect, so she recognized him at a glance. This is our Qi sect's rank 3 astral Qi. Holy shit! Luo Yuan widened his eyes and shocked. Don't tell me that a person from the Qi sect pushed the mountain rock 2 meters with his own strength. As soon as the third cycle astral Qi was released, Yi Dong moved again, pushing the mountain stones forward. And maintained a smooth speed. 2.1 meters, 2.2 meters. 2.5 meters, 2.8 meters. 3 meters. Still moving forward. 3.1 meters, 3.5 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters. Who? I can't push anymore. When Yi Dong pushed it to a distance of 5 meters, he suddenly stopped. Then, he did not even look at the mountain rock before turning around and walking away. The scene was completely silent. 5 meters. Before him, his best result was only 1.5 meters, but he actually pushed the mountain stones by a full 5 meters. What do you think? Muron Wanqing said as she stood beside Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan said seriously, if it weren't for this exam, we wouldn't have found such a strong person. This kind of person is too low-key. And I feel he hasn't used his full strength yet. These words were spoken by Xiang Nan and Muron Wanqing at the same time. Muron Wanqing nodded and said, I can see that he still has some strength left, but he chose to preserve his strength. This person is not simple. I'll do it this time. Jiang Qing stood up. His bad habit had occurred again. Seeing that Yi Dong had attracted everyone's shocked gazes, he couldn't hold back any longer. That gaze should belong to me, Jiang Qing. No one else deserves it. Jiang Qing's strength was indeed extremely strong. Furthermore, he was a member of the Saber sect, and his own strength was extremely shocking. Without using the primordial dipper qi, he pushed the mountain stones 2 meters away. Immediately after, he used his primordial dipper qi to push the mountain stones forward. 2.5 meters, 3 meters, 3.5 meters, 4 meters. 4.5 meters, 4.8 meters, 4.9 meters, 5 meters. Jiang Qing didn't intend to stop. At this moment, his entire body was trembling violently, but he gritted his teeth and had to push 5 meters away. Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle.